Wolf back. What is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street. RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here with our usual Monday show, now 7 p.m. live on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you watch. Today, talking about a topic I think is going to be a real fun one. Guys we want to draft more of. I'm super stoked for this in the sense of we saw that our exposures weren't quite where we wanted them in these early underdog drafts. We're getting some news, perhaps, that these guys are going to be better. The bets are changing on them. And before August ends, as we have our last, I've got about 50 personal BBM lefts and just, of course, a few more on DraftKings and whatnot. Who do we want to be bumping our exposure to? Now, of course, I know redraft is starting as well, and we can certainly take this, and we'll talk about a little bit of redraft ADP. There's some huge gaps in there, too. But, of course, if we want to draft them in best ball, there's a good chance we're also going to be wanting to draft them in redraft. But this is also more so that best ball portfolio style show. Who do we want to be bumping these exposures to, whether it's new news, whether it's us just kind of waking up and saying, hey, this guy's actually a really good value at his picks. We're going to go position by position. I'll start us off at quarterback. One of those guys is Geno Smith. Now, a lot of these takes come from vamping up the draft guy that's about to drop. So why do I love Geno Smith? Why is he somebody I want to bump my exposure to? Well, every year we see one play caller, it seems, that just blows up an offense, and that ends up being a huge catalyst to massive fantasy spikes. I mean, the primest example is Sean McVay way back in the day with the Rams. They went from literally the lowest scoring team to then first that year. But whether it's Mike McDaniels, Bobby Slowick last year with the Texans, we see it almost every single year. Most often it does come from the Shanahan tree, but sometimes we see these college coaches come up and really just for revolutionizing and bring these concepts that we're not used to seeing in the NFL, and it can work with great success. And I have really, really high expectations for Ryan Grubb coming over from the Washington Huskies. They were 9th highest in pass play rate in the nation. Tons of motion, tons of deep shots is what this kind of offense is based upon. They also mix the run scheme, not a ton of zone and power only. They mix it up. They blend it. Ryan Grubb, an offensive line type of guy, so he really loves getting intricate in those blocking schemes, and they also are very aggressive on fourth downs. Those are kind of the staples of this Ryan Grubb offense. You look at the fact that they had 3 wide receivers drafted in the top 3 rounds here in, of course, Rome Odunze. Then you had Jalen Polk go to my Patriots and Jalen McMillan. Well, you look at what they're kind of set up here in the Seattle Seahawks. DK Metcalf, a great Rome Odunze. Jackson Smith-Njigba, McMillan right there, that H that flanked the slot. You can move him around. And then Jalen McMillan, pretty solid Tyler Lockett impersonation there in terms of getting deep, winning contested balls, even if he's a little undersized. So it just seems like a glove-like fit for what Ryan Grubb did in college to what he's going to want to bring in the NFL. Doesn't mean it's 100% going to be success, but we often do see that a catalyst to a massive fantasy breakout. And then we got to get to Geno, the guy that we're also talking about here. Why do I like that? Well, he's already talked how much he loves this Ryan Grubb offense, the amount of control it gives him at the line of scrimmage. He said, I feel like Peyton Manning out here because I'm calling these shots. I'm moving things around. I'm finding the win before the play even starts. But even more important, we talked how the deep game is so important for this. Very few people remember that in 2022, Geno Smith was actually the number 1 rated deep passer in the NFL, according to PFF. He had a 99.2 pass rating, a 47.1% completion rate on throws of 20-plus yards. That was second in the league. He had 15 touchdowns on just 40 attempts. He's the most touchdowns and just the 10th most attempts. He was the single best deep passer in the NFL, and last year, number 6. They reined it in a bit more. The line wasn't great. That is my biggest concern here, is the line. But you look at some of the quotes coming out from camp. I just have a few to read to you here. It's all about this deep passing game really igniting. Again, Geno said, the coach rather said, it's a really good marriage here with some of the skill set Geno has. We asked our quarterbacks to do a lot. Luckily for us, Geno's really athletic as well. We don't have to limit it to just drop back. I think he's really good in the play action game as well. Will be a big part of our offense. Smith, according to the beat writers, continued to spin it on Saturday, demonstrating a lightning quick release, elite accuracy, dropping deep balls right into the hands of his receivers. And then the next day, continuing to shine and demonstrate excellent command, orchestrating Grubb's offense. Smith turned another outstanding practice in, launching the ball downfield with great success all afternoon. But you also caught maybe that comment I said, Geno's more athletic as well than you might expect, said their coach. And he himself said last year, really midway through the season, I felt like I could have used my legs a little bit more. He only had 155 rush yards. The year before, he had 366 on 68 rushing attempts. That's kind of like that Pat Mahomes. It's not pure Konami, but 36 points on just rushing that got ripped off last year. And he said, that's something I want to do. I think I'm very athletic. I could add that extra element to defenses, what they have to account for, get a couple extra first downs, a couple extra touchdowns. That could be huge. So there's a lot of these elements, the new offense, the potential to run a bit more, the mesh with these three receivers being used better. I do think it's going to come through perfectly and yield a monster season for Geno. And I've barely been drafting him until now. So I'm definitely trying to get a little bit more DK Metcalf, maybe even a little more JSN, who I have just about none of. I have a decent amount of Lockett, but either way, I've only drafted Geno 3 to 4 times total in a lot of drafts right now. So he's somebody I want to buy in on this offense, see if I can get that bet right when he's going right now 160 or so. I could see him really, really taking off. So he's my quarterback, Geno Smith, the one I want to buy more of.
Yeah, I think you pretty appropriately covered why you should be wanting to invest in Geno Smith. I mean, people seem to overlook top 5 QB season just 2 years ago. And a lot of people were talking about him last season as being this sleeper guy in the late rounds if you kind of punt quarterback because of the season he came off of 2 seasons ago. And now they've completely dismissed what he's been able to do in the Seattle offense. And I agree, probably fantasy-friendly improvements incoming with Ryan Grubb joining the offense. But moving on to my quarterback, it's Josh Allen. It's really not a complex argument for why real bold. Not really a complex argument for why you want to be drafting Josh Allen. It's not only has he been a top 2 QB in 4 straight seasons, in 4 consecutive seasons, he's put together a top 10 fantasy performance of all time. Like not just the top 10 in general, top 10 all time in terms of quarterback performances as Josh Allen. Obviously a battering ram at the goal line, phenomenal passer, deep passer as well. He has it all for what you're looking for in a fantasy option at quarterback. And I understand the concerns with potentially the departure of Stephon Diggs and a more run-heavy offense with a move over to Joe Brady. And you look at those splits on how they ran the ball. But Josh Allen is going to benefit from a stronger rushing attack. I mean, he himself is one of the greater assets in Buffalo on the ground. So I feel like we could see some of the career highs for Josh Allen in terms of his rushing production, in terms of yardage, and he'll continue to have that goal line role. We've talked about it at length. The offense being allergic to using James Cook at the goal line. Josh Allen's got that on lock. I don't want to be underweight on Josh Allen. And we've talked about wanting to invest in these elite quarterbacks just because of their depressed price. I mean, we've got nobody really going in the second round this year after we saw 3 guys basically going in the second round last year in Allen, Hurts, and Mahomes, very draft by draft, but pretty often saw at least 1 to 2 of those guys going in the second round last year. And now they're all pushed down into round 4. Sometimes you get them in round 3, but just the depressed price, we're still confident in these guys' ability to produce. So grabbing them when they're available in the closer to the middle rounds it's much more appealing. And I really don't want to be underweight on any of these guys. And to this point, I am underweight on Josh Allen, and I need to make a point of bumping that exposure up. I think it is partly due to the fact that I am low on Dalton Kincaid, and I'm more inclined to click these elite quarterbacks who I know I can stack with one of my elite option or one of my high-end options at one of the skill positions, running back or wide receiver, specifically wide receiver and tight ends. But it's easy to stack Josh Allen, so I just need to get to him more often. You can grab any number of Shakir, Curtis Samuel, a guy I'll talk about later, or Dalton Kincaid, even though I don't specifically prefer him, or Keon Coleman. It's just so easy to stack Josh Allen. I just need to be making a bit more of aggressive moves and disregarding ADP to make sure I can get some more of him into my portfolio.
Yeah, you mentioned exactly when his weapons are so cheap right now. We've already seen Bills go Burr be the winning strategy just a few years ago for Liam Murphy. It could easily be when Josh Allen is going in round 4, you can get multiple of his weapons in round 8 or later. I think it's an absolutely great argument. 71% of his games across the last 4 years have been top 12, with nearly half of those top 5. It is just unbelievable consistency. The spikes are bigger than any other quarterback. 15 rushing touchdowns last year, and even better pace when Joe Brady took over, on pace for 19 rushing touchdowns under Joe Brady's offense. So I am absolutely thrilled to see how this one goes. And if you're just thinking of redraft too, both Allen and Jalen Hurts were the only 2 quarterbacks that were above 60% of playoff rosters. So just a little sneak preview. I'm definitely in on elite quarterbacks in general this year, and certainly in best ball when they're falling as late as they are. I think it is a great idea to to continue to bump your exposure. Well, Pat, we almost have 100 with you here in just the first 10 minutes. I love to see that. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a real quick plug. If you enjoy what you're hearing, whether you're live with us or catching the replay, please do consider hitting that thumbs up button. It really does help us get out to more people. Great to see you, Thaddeus, Charlie, some great people. Get your comments, your questions on in. As you guys know, when we draft in about 30 minutes or so, we'll be answering any questions that you have. But thanks again for being here with us. Let's now turn our attention to running backs we want higher exposure to right now. And my first one is Isaiah Pacheco. And I'm not even really light on him. I have like 14%, so I'm pretty good at the exposure number I'm at. But I really want to get this into the 20s. I am just so convinced Isaiah Pacheco is going to be a league winner, especially in best ball when he's going in round 4, early round 4 right now. But even in redraft, I've jumped him up into what I consider the quote-unquote hero-worthy running backs. And let's talk about real quickly why I think that's the case. Well, one, we know Andy Reid has coached many hero-worthy running backs, whether it's Jamal Charles, Brian Westbrook. We see him, when he finds his guy, just use them on every down and use them so creatively in the passing game. And can Isaiah Pacheco really be that guy? Well, we've actually seen glimpses of that for sure. Without McKinnon last year, he was an absolute beast. Yeah, sure, only running back 15 in points per game on the season. But when you look at the games without McKinnon, he averaged 22.3 fantasy points per game. We kind of defined that legendary season when Pat Kerrane wrote about it just so many years ago. It was defined as 23 points per game. So he was right on the cusp there in the games without Jerick McKinnon. He averaged a 14.9% target share. He was on pace for 353 total opportunities, 89 targets, 81 catches, 1,712 yards from scrimmage, and 21 total touchdowns for 379 PPR points. That was his season-long pace. If you extrapolate the games without McKinnon, nearly 80% of the snaps in that span, that would certainly qualify as a legendary season and shows you that he could be that pass-catching guy should he get the opportunity. He only was behind McCaffrey and Kyron Williams and waited opportunities after week 10, and they had nobody in free agency as McKinnon departs. And so why could this role continue in 2024? Well, one, he's gone, McKinnon, but two, you read the training camp reports, you see these highlights of him running these wheel routes, catching it over his shoulder. All the talk of Pacheco's work, quote, on his flexibility seems to be paying off. He hasn't lost that violent running style, but somehow seems nimble enough to avoid even the quickest Chiefs defenders, is the report. And then the biggest thing, in my opinion, the biggest news of all, why I'm confident, is when Reid got asked, how are you going to fill the Jerick McKinnon role? He did not hesitate to say, Isaiah Pacheco is ready to do all that. He's good with the protections. He's good with the techniques, the fundamentals. He can run all the routes. He's got great hands. And then he backtracked a little bit. Well, yeah, CEH can do that too. But the fact that, boom, he snapped right to Pacheco, it tells you exactly how they feel about this guy. Reid is ready to give him that workhorse ceiling. I am all about it. And then it also makes the fact that this offense, I think, is going to be even better than they were by a long stretch. Only 15th in total scoring last year. And then you add Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown. Rashee Rice takes another step forward. I could see them easily being that Chiefs of old, where it's 50 total touchdowns on the year, 30 points a game, tops in the league, and Pacheco being a goal line hammer. I know they throw a lot, and that would be the kind of rub here is, they throw so much in the red zone. But Isaiah Pacheco, he only got about, I think it was 17 carries from inside the 5-yard line, and he buried like 11 of them. He was a very high conversion rate on those. So regardless, I think that workhorse down roll, the McKinnon being gone, and Reid promising that Pacheco is going to be the one to step in, it has me thinking, especially at round 4, but even in late round 2 in redraft where receiver depth is so big right now, I could totally see myself mid to late round 2 taking Pacheco as my first running back to pair with an Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then you build out like Drake London in round 3, whatever it might be. But certainly in best ball too, where we're kind of focused here, 3 receivers, and then you get Pacheco in round 4 to be a true potential 20-point per game guy. Oh, I love it. I love these builds, and I know I have a lot already, but I'm going to continue to go all in on this guy.
Yeah, I think the quote that came out of Chiefs training camp from Andy Reid, one we talked about together, was super encouraging for those who are bulls on Isaiah Pacheco in terms of his role as a pass catcher growing, because we already know he's going to monopolize the rushing work. The real question was his growth as a pass catcher, and that quote coming from Andy Reid, as well as some clips of him just mauling dudes. Drew Tranquil, the Chiefs linebacker, was one of the clips I saw, just mauling dudes in pass pro and just just getting fired up about it. That's just real encouraging if you're a guy who's already above weight on Pacheco and looking to even build out that portfolio even further. I think that's got to be encouraging. And yeah, you mentioned the Chiefs' really high pass rate in the red zone. I believe it was the highest rate in the league last season, but he still has never cleared double-digit touchdowns. And that's not something a Chiefs running back has really typically done outside of Kareem Hunt during the Patrick Mahomes era. But I still think it's very much within the range of outcomes, and his ability to break that double-digit touchdown threshold would certainly boost his fantasy value and pay off in a big way for people investing in him heavily. But another guy who could be in line for a bunch of touchdowns this season, and who I also believe is very much worthy of a hero running back build, is Kyren Williams. And there has been a lot of back and forth on Kyren Williams this offseason due to the presence of Blake Corum in this backfield. The Rams obviously spent third-round draft capital to bring this guy in, and people are also nervous because of the fact that they just have super similar skill sets. They're physically built the same. They do a lot of the same things on the football field well. So he's been called a Kyren clone throughout this offseason just because of what they both bring to the table, and it's making people a bit nervous. But I feel like the hesitancy has gone a little bit too far, and I have not exactly taken advantage of it per se. I mean, I just need to get more of this guy into my profile or into my portfolio. Last season, Kyren Williams, the per game RB2, but still finished as the RB4 despite a stint on the IR. He missed 4 games last season because of an ankle injury. Last season, he was on the field just in totality, including those 4 games he missed where Royce Freeman, Darrell Henderson picked up snaps for him and were the kind of the go-to guys during those 4 weeks. Kyren obviously came back and absolutely dominated the workload after that, but including those 4 games that he missed, 60% of the snaps and 51% of the rush attempts. So when you look at the totality of the touches that Kyren Williams received last season, he was pretty damn close to being in a backfield by committee considering the time that he missed, and he was still able to finish as the RB4. The 3 running backs who kind of siphoned off touches, whether it was due to injury or just Kyren getting a break, it was Royce Freeman, Darrell Henderson, and Ronnie Rivers, and then obviously you had Cam Akers there a little bit in the early in the season, but they siphoned off close to 200 touches last year. So there was a fair amount of work not going to Kyren Williams, and I don't think anyone's projecting Blake Corum to be a 200 touch back in his rookie season. He's shown the ability to deliver a RB4 season while giving away close to 200 touches. So I really believe that if he can maintain the goal line role, and it's kind of just this situation where Corum is coming in to give Kyren a breather, and that's kind of what Sean McVay's indicated, that it's simply just a guy to be there to take a little bit of work off his plate here and there. And so if that's what the case is, and he's maintaining the valuable touches, he wasn't even really a guy who was used heavily in the pass game. It's not really his strength. He was just eating up touchdowns, eating up yardage, was getting all the carries. So if he maintains the usage at the goal line and is effective as a runner still, I think he can pay off in a big way. Not necessarily pay off in a big way because there's only so much room to improve from his RB8 price tag, but a top 5 season is still very much within the range of outcomes, even with Blake Corum in the mix. And I think people are just getting a little bit too concerned, and I may have been in that pool of people early in the draft season, but still a month remaining to course correct, and I plan to do so with my remaining drafts.
I mean, you think it can't be even that huge, but the fact that he's going in round 3 right now, you could get 2 receivers that you really love and then get a potential top 5 running back, like you said, the running back 2, by a whopping 3.2 points above the next closest guy. It was CMC, it was Kyren, and then it was kind of the rest of the field last year. In his active games, too, this is wild. 83% of the snaps, 74% of the rush attempts, 67% of the routes, and 11% target share. Just the definition of a bell cow. And I do get that Corum will eat into that. That's kind of the goal, is to keep him healthy. But McVay himself has already said he's going to leave that room. We are so glad. Man, did I miss you this offseason, was the first thing he said to Williams when training camp started. He is so stoked to have him back. McVay's confessed about having him on his fantasy team and wanting to feed him as a result of it. He just loves this guy, as he should. He has been so damn good. So the fact that he still goes in late, I got him at 36 in a draft the other day, but anywhere in like 25 and after, I'm all about it. I don't understand why he's falling right now. And even in redraft mid-round, second round, I'm down with that, but especially in best ball in round 3. I'm with you too. My kind of core concerns have been Aswaj. We talked about last week in our early training camp risers and followers show. Kyron just has that number one role. It's not a 1A, 1B. It's a 1, it's a 2, and that's really important here. Well, moving to the running back position, I talked about liking Geno Smith and the passing game with my quarterback, but I'm also all about Kenneth Walker because I don't believe Ryan Grubb is only here to impact the passing. I know you think of the Washington Huskies, that high-flying air raid style attack where they're getting all these guys deep and vertical, moving them around in motion. But Ryan Grubb, again, talked how he is an offensive line guy at heart. It's how his coaching career started, and his favorite thing to scheme is unique blocking schemes, is unique ways to use his running backs. His lead guy with the Huskies last year had 1,100 yards and 16 touchdowns, and that bodes well for Kenneth Walker. And he goes in that range right now in best ball, right around 68 ADP. He goes around 50 as well in redraft leagues. So one of the few running backs that is falling in those formats. And I don't think he is the dead zone back, though. You look at the guys that typically go there, you're only betting on volume. There's rarely real talent there. The Rashad Whites, the Joe Mixons. Well, you look at Ken Walker. He has a 4.38 40, 98th percentile in that speed. He averaged 8.9 yards per reception last year. That was 4th in the league. You talked about this exciting new scheme we were just talking about, but also the fact that he's getting some great hype. Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated goes in there, observes camp. He says, quote, Kenneth Walker was the star of Monday's practice. The first time in full pads, it reflected the sort of spring and summer he's had. To the new staff, he looks like the kind of back you can play on all 3 downs and build your running game around while adding then after that. Zach Charbonnet gives the team some depth behind him. A lot of people speculating, oh, the new staff going to come in, fall in love with Charbonnet, who's just more reliable, more dependable, whatever it is. No, they have fallen in love with Ken Walker. In fact, just to add on to the hype, something I tweeted out earlier today, Mike McDonald, the head coach, he says when he talked to running backs coach Kennedy Polamalu, says every time we go over the roster, running back coach Kennedy Polamalu, he gives me a little hint that's like, let's feed this guy. He can be special about Ken Walker. That's the type of quote that just gives you a little goosebumps for a running back, again, going in around 6, 7, sometimes even falling that far in best ball. I understand, he doesn't always just go right into the hole and get what's blocked. He had the 6th most stuffed runs. That could get frustrating, could wear thin on the coaching staff. But for now, it sounds like they are ready to make this guy a true 3-down back. When you get a guy with this type of speed, this type of talent, and offense that I've already talked about, I think takes a step forward under Ryan Grubb. At that price point, it's a no-brainer. I am in love with Kenneth Walker. I have not nearly enough. And that's also the range, too, where, like, by then the wide receiver tap is kind of turned off. It's run dry. We're picking and going for – I like Lad McConkey. Deontay Johnson I'm intrigued by. But give me a true 3-down back with speed and an offense I think is going to ascend when I've already taken 3 running wide receivers on my roster. You could go 4 wide receivers, an elite tight end, and then still take Kenneth Walker at that point. So I'm all about the type of builds you can get, and I think he could be a really, really strong anchor running back 1 that you don't even have to take until your 6th or 7th pick. I'm in love, and I need to get more of him.
At this point, you've got me convinced that this Seattle offense is going to be like the Washington offense, averaging 35 points a game.
I hope so.
I mean, yeah, I'm on board for the offensive improvements coming. The knock on Kenneth Walker, you kind of highlighted his home run mentality, always going for trying to rip a big one instead of just getting the easy 4 yards to keep them on schedule, keep the chains moving. But we've known that about Kenneth Walker to this point in his NFL career. You kind of know what you're getting, and at a 5th, 6th round price, I think it's a fair investment. I don't really have a strong stance one way or another. I do have. Especially earlier in this offseason, I was making some pretty heavy investments into the Seattle offense. I've cooled off a little bit as July wore on, but it may be time for me to start dipping back into that pool. Because my exposures to the Eagles guys through June, and I was drafting in May some, but primarily through June, it was pretty heavy. So I cooled off, but it may be back time to dip back in. But speaking of offenses that could be pretty high end, the Dallas offense, this is a little bit of more low end guy in terms of draft capital required to invest. But Rico Dowdle, it just kind of comes back to one of the more philosophical, straightforward concepts in fantasy, just embracing uncertainty in high-end offenses. And if we've known anything about this offense, some people attributed it to Kellen Moore. I was one of those people, but Mike McCarthy proved that he can keep this offense on schedule and be one of the more high-scoring and potent offenses in the NFL without Kellen Moore's presence at offensive coordinator. In the last 4 seasons with a healthy Dak Prescott, so not including 2020, Dak missed most of the season, but in the last 4 seasons with Dak playing the entire year, the Cowboys haven't finished lower than 6th in total points per game and haven't finished lower than 11th in total yardage per game. 2023 first in total points per game, and you consistently harp on the passing offense, highest in the league in terms of yardage per game, passing touchdowns per game, passing attempts per game, but the offense can provide quality fantasy production for their running backs. I know Tony Pollard was a huge disappointment last season, but he was given the opportunity to succeed. He just didn't really make the most of it. He dominated the workload, and he was given 17 rush attempts from inside the 5-yard line, and he converted on just a few of them. It was either 2 or 3, I believe, that he converted on, but he was given the 7th most rush attempts from inside the 5-yard line, just failed to convert. And the only guy really standing in Rico Dowdle's way is Ezekiel Elliott. And I'm grabbing Ezekiel Elliott. This is just kind of one of those backfields where I want to be overly exposed to both pieces because I think whoever emerges as the go-to guy is going to be immensely valuable. And I'm drafting Ezekiel Elliott, but you can really, really reasonably make the case that this guy is done for. He's highest in the league among active players in terms of career carries. We've all seen him lose a step. I don't think he's fully lost it just yet. He definitely offers some value to an NFL roster, and that's the reason the Dallas Cowboys brought him in. Maybe that's just as a pass protector and that like a third down and goal line type of role. But the world where Rico Dowdle beats out Ezekiel Elliott for the 1A job, it's very realistic. And if that is what ends up happening, especially down the stretch into the best ball playoffs, I want to have my Rico Dowdle bags because some people are skeptical of this Dallas offense. I am not one of them. I believe that they will be one of the higher scoring offenses in the league once again. And some people are skeptical of Rico Dowdle as well because of some ridiculous quote that came out of the executive vice president's mouth of the Dallas Cowboys, hyping up Royce Freeman. Like, are we really going to put that much weight into a quote out of the EVP? Like, this is a business guy. Like, it's not like, I guess like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know how much like influence he has onto like playing time and like roster build, but like really we're going to put a bunch of weight into this guy hyping up Royce Freeman? Like, I think it's pretty clear who the 2 guys are who have the chance to earn legitimate work in this backfield. It's Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott. And with Dowdle, you're kind of leaning into the unknown, which is largely successful for fantasy football, especially when it's from a quality offense. Rico Dowdle never cleared double-digit carries in the NFL until last year. And I think that is like to a degree a negative sign. But what I'm getting at is that we largely don't know what we're going to get out of Rico Dowdle if he is leaned on heavily. And if he breaks in the right way and he succeeds in one of the NFL's highest scoring offense, I'm going to be very upset if I am underweight on Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because if you hadn't, he probably would have been one of mine just because I do have a lot of Zeke early on. I was hammering him, and I don't think it's a horrible bet. I like having Zeke, but more and more as these drumbeat comes out from Twitter it's Rico Dowdle, the best running back. It's not really even close right now, and you look at who he has to beat out, it's really not that difficult on, as you said, a top 6 offense for every single year. Dak's been healthy, the number 1 offense last year. It all makes so much sense. I am trying to sneak in a ton more Rico Dowdle in that 130, 140 range. You could definitely see a situation where first training camp, your preseason game, Rico Dowdle rips off like 4 straight 5-yard carries, looks like the best back, and boom, he's now going in the 100s. I totally could be justifiable. So I definitely want to get my bag, and I want to start getting it ASAP, and I have been. I've been trying to, for sure. In terms of honorable mentions, we didn't do this at quarterback either, so maybe you can toss out a handful of those, and we don't really have to dive into them, but just in terms of a couple other guys I'm trying to bump at, as is the whole world. Chase Brown, I'm trying to get more of. I had about an even split of him and Zach Moss. Similar to Pacheco, I already had actually. Everyone has to run and check how much Chase Brown do I have now that all the steam is on him. And I did have a nice 14% there as well, but I am getting more and more convinced this guy that was a workhorse in college, 328 carries his last season, 400 touch season in that year, a lot bigger than people realize because he's so damn fast. People think he's this tiny little scat back, but no, he is capable of being a true focal point. And then when Orlando Brown comes out and says, if I could draft in fantasy, my number one running back pick would be Chase Brown. Of course, it's a teammate hyping up a teammate. You don't want to put too much stock in that, but it kind of does suggest, hey, maybe this guy truly is the real deal, and maybe he is truly going to get that usage. So Chase Brown's one of those guys you got to kind of have to go in your top 100 now, but I'm all about reaching on him, trying to keep updating my portfolio. And then J.K. Dobbins, too, the positive buzz and steam keeps coming out of Chargers camp that he's looking like the best running back. I know I have a ton of Gus Edwards, so this is kind of a play on that as well. My bag is already firmly packed on Gus. Maybe I hedge a little bit, get a little Dobbins, because even like a 70% healthy J.K. Dobbins, and Gus is truly, it's not a player I love. It's a situation I've been betting on. But now that more evidence, now the bet is changing that, hey, maybe J.K. Dobbins is actually the guy that could lead that situation, I got to start hedging there as well. And so right around 150, 160, if he looks good in the first preseason game or two, it looks like it's J.K. Dobbins, even close to the Dobbins of old. I mean, he's a guy that literally had one leg for a year and averaged over 6 yards a carry. So Dobbins is somebody I'm definitely starting to try to boost alongside Chase Brown. Did you have any other running backs, Mo? I didn't really tell you to prepare any honorable mentions. So if you don't, no worries at all.
I've always got a keeping my exposure in the peripherals and kind of getting an idea of who I need to bump my exposure to. One of them is Raheem Mostert. Really gross pick, really ugly pick. Like, you don't want to invest in a 30-plus running back, but they extended him a vote of confidence from the organization. Mike McDaniel throughout the offseason saying this is our go-to guy. I mean, to be fair, he's hyping up Devon Achane as well, but still he's saying that Mostert is going to play a role in this offense, and a pretty significant one at that. And we know what kind of rushing attack that Mike McDaniel can scheme up. I mean, it led to 20-plus touchdowns for Mostert last season. So I don't want to be underweight when he goes off. Like I said on the last regarding Rico Dowdle, it's just investing in good offenses, especially when there's some uncertainty. And it's not even like that there's uncertainty regarding Raheem Mostert. It's just like people are just ready to fully jump onto the Devon Achane train. And I understand why, but I mean, all signs point to Raheem Mostert playing a role in this offense, and it's very realistic that it's just like, why were we discounting Raheem Mostert so much? And like, I understand why, but like, I'm just saying, when he ends up going for 100 yards and a score in week one, and people are just like pissed why they discounted him just because he was old. It's I once again, I don't want to be on that side of the coin, especially with an offense and a rushing attack like this. And then the other one I want to highlight, another veteran guy. It's so easy just to click the young and exciting names in these drafts, but another veteran guy who's projecting, especially given the rhetoric coming out of training camp, to have a consistent role and be the engine of the offense, especially in the backfield, is James Conner. The coach speak coming out of Arizona. This guy is our guy. The offense, especially as a runner, runs through him. The beat reporter is saying the same thing as well. Like, the best version of the Cardinals offense is when James Conner is seeing a heavy workload, and it's just it's all falling into place that people are talking about Marshawn Lloyd having a redshirt year. Maybe that's the case for Trey Benson, not necessarily a full-blown redshirt, but just not like being the guy who everyone is expecting him to be. I remember last month he was like he was making a push. He never got there, I don't think, but he was making a push to be in the double-digit picks, like cresting that pick 100 threshold, just because everyone assumed that James Conner was this dust ball, and as soon as he went down for a game, Trey Benson was going to be the guy to take over and never lose that job. But everything coming out of Arizona is saying that James Conner is going to continue to be a value part of this offense. And during his time in Arizona, not only has he been a valuable part of their offense, he's been a valuable fantasy asset. So I am severely underweight on him. As the guys over at Ship Chasing, I've got my thin exposure sheet. I do not have very much exposure to this guy, and it's a boring pick, but I think it's a pick that has to be made. I think he quite easily, as long as he stays healthy for 13, 14 games, and that's kind of what you are always expecting out of James Conner, and he doesn't lose that job to Trey Benson when he gets hurt, I think you can pretty easily slot him in for a top 24 running back season.
Running back 6, running back 10, and running back 9 in points per game since joining the Cardinals. I know the argument is he's going to miss some time. He's going to miss some games. You know you're getting that. That's so overbaked into his price right now. I actually just wrote about him earlier today for the draft guide. You guys can check that coming out in a day or two on rotostreetjournal.com. If you want to support your boys, would be a great way to do it. My heart and soul goes into this thing. I was just writing about James Conner. Crazy stat on him was he was solid last year, but when Kyler Murray came back, he was on pace. I'm checking out right now. His points went from 11 points per game to 17 half PPR points per game, 290-point pace. That would have been the running back 3 on the season, behind only Kyron Williams and CMC. And a big part of that was a spike in receiving. Without Kyler Murray, 27 catches and 102 scoreless yards. That was his season-long pace. With Kyler Murray, his season-long pace was 49 targets, 40 catches, and 287 yards and 4 touchdowns. Doesn't seem like huge numbers, but he's always had 300-plus receiving yards with Kyler Murray. It was a huge way, especially the receiving touchdowns again. He's consistently put up 3 a season at minimum with Kyler Murray there as well. And then you look at the last stretch of games, the last 5 games on the season. It's James Conner. He's dust. He has no ceiling. He was absurd. He averaged over 22 fantasy points per game, 22.6. He scored more than Christian McCaffrey. He scored more than every single running back in the league for the final 5 weeks on a points per game basis. So you can't tell me James Conner has no need, can win it for you all upside, because we saw it last year. He was a running back that you needed to have down the stretch to make some serious money in best ball. So James Conner, yeah, he'll probably miss some time, but when he's in there, especially when he and Murray are together, I know this is going beyond an honorable mention at this point because we're diving so deep into him, but I love this guy, and I do not have nearly as much as my love would suggest, so I'm with you. Maybe we add some James Conner tonight when we draft in just about 20 minutes, folks. But please do consider, before we get into that thumbs up button, 200 of you here midway through the show. You love to see it. Thank you again so much for being here, guys. We are going to now turn our attention to the wide receiver position, where we have some similar offenses and similar takes of going, but different shades of those offenses that we're going to break down for you. But we both have receivers from the Bills offense. I know you said you wanted to target some more Josh Allen. It makes sense to get some of his weapons, but which ones to go after? Now, I have a good amount of Curtis Samuel already. Got some Keon Coleman. Unlike you, I do like Dalton Kincaid, so I've got a nice bag of him already. But the one guy I haven't taken much of is Khalil Shakir. We talk about Josh Allen and this offense. They vacated so much. I feel like I say this on every single show, but it's worth reiterating. 3,353 air yards, the most in the league. 73% of the air yard share was also most in the league. 317 targets was second most. 54.7% target share was second most, and a whopping 86.3% of their wide receiver targets are now up for grabs. And we're trying to figure out who's it going to be, how's it going to go. And a lot of people, I think, wisely comparing it to the Chiefs situation of last year, where who knows, none of these guys end up being that valuable. Or maybe it does really concentrate to Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, those early rotation guys alongside Dalton Kincaid, of course. I think he's going to eat. But Khalil Shakir is the one that is reportedly emerging along the lines of the number one guy in practice on Thursday and for most of the week. And when I was reading this report, one thing that stood out to me, I know it seems kind of weird to read about one play, but I'm just going to read this little blurb on you in here. Shakir caught a touchdown pass, 11-11 red zone drills that was simply jaw-dropping. He's working against all-pro slot corner Taron Johnson. He's against superb coverage. Johnson had him under wraps. It didn't look like Allen had anywhere to throw the ball, but Allen trusts Shakir. He sees it. He unleashes the pass. Shakir somehow gets the smallest window, catches the ball, makes the contested catch. And I know that one play in training camp, what are we going to overreact to? Come on, Wolf. Let's get it together. But that's the type of throw that you need to be on the same page with your quarterback to go for. Your quarterback has to have faith in you, and that's exactly what Allen said. I have a lot of faith in Shakir. He's a smart player. He's much faster than you think. He's got a big catch radius. For a guy with smaller arms, he just finds a way to go up and get the ball. So those are the type of throws that Allen made with Stephon Diggs all the time. And so somebody's going to kind of step into that, work in the middle of the field, working that like before the ball break, before you even finish your route, the ball's right there for you. It sounds like him and Shakir have that type of special timing going down. Don't forget that he actually outproduced Stephon Diggs in the final 10 games of last year. He had 462 receiving yards compared to 422 for Diggs on 42 fewer targets. In the postseason, he scores in back-to-back weeks, 3 catches, 31 yards and a touchdown, and then 7 catches, 44 yards and a touchdown on 9 targets, was the leading target earner for the Bills in that last playoff game here. And you also mix in a few 15 points here or there throughout that span of the second half of the year. He already was starting to brim, but now that there's such a wide open scheme, he's really the lone carryover. He's the guy that's going the 110s, 120s, and for whatever reason, I've not been clicking him nearly enough. He's certainly somebody I'm going to be trying to bump my exposure. I bumped him about 15 spots in both my redraft and best ball rankings. So I'm trying to pump up my Khalil Shakir exposure. I know you're also looking to target the Buffalo Bills as well. I know a lot of that might be covered in what I just said, but hey, I also totally agree on this guy and Curtis Samuel too.
Yeah, I don't need to dip back into the opportunity available in this offense, but I mean, looking at the Buffalo beat reporters and the stuff coming out of training camp, you got to think just about everybody in this offense is having a hot training camp. I mean, reports coming out about Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid. You know who isn't getting much buzz though? It's MVS and Chase Claypool.
Yeah, see you later.
That guy with like 78% Chase Claypool is just in shambles, just burning every single 18th round pick that he had so far this season. I mean, Tyrell Shavers is a guy whose name I learned 2 weeks ago. Is getting positive buzz out of training camp, and we're getting just clips of MVS dropping passes and stuff. But when it comes to Curtis Samuel, so when you're getting this much positive buzz, you really got to parse through what's legitimate and what's not, because as much as it's fun to get excited about these guys, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Dalton Kincaid, and Keon Coleman cannot all have like phenomenal, super fantasy relevant seasons. You don't necessarily have to pick your spots, but you have to understand that not every single one of these guys is going to be successful, and you can't be overweight on all of them. I mean, maybe you could, but I don't think that's
too deep, Mo. Can I offer you one quick counter? Joe Brady as the play caller for the Carolina Panthers 2020. Robbie Anderson, wide receiver 20. Curtis Samuel himself, wide receiver 23. DJ Moore, somehow the worst of these three, was still wide receiver 25. 3 top 25 wide receivers with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. So you're telling me that we can't get 3 top 25 receivers with Josh Allen? I know it's a stretch, but with those 3 receivers and Teddy Bridgewater, that's Joe Brady's last time calling plays. All of these guys are going outside the top 40 wide receivers right now. Just going to toss it out there. Maybe we could get all 3 of them, at least at these price tags. I mean, come on.
Well, so I did want to point to some of the Joe Brady stuff in my case for Curtis Samuel. I mean, what I was kind of getting at in terms of parsing through this information and trying to find what's actionable and what's actually useful. You hear this stuff like so-and-so's lining up all over the formation. The one that comes to mind from last year is like Bijan Robinson is a slot receiver, basically. Like he does everything. And then like, obviously it doesn't come to fruition. And he did get a lot of targets and he lined up all over the field, but like it gets blown out of proportion a fair amount. But we're getting those same reports with Curtis Samuel, and I am willing to buy into them, because we're hearing he's lining up all over the field. Same type of rhetoric you're used to hearing with these guys. He's lining up all over the field. He's in the backfield. Like he's like not necessarily drawing Debo comps, but like it's the fact that he's lining out like a wide receiver in the backfield, like similar to Debo in that nature. But I am buying into that. The last time him and Joe Brady crossed paths, finished with 97 targets as well as 41 carries. So he kind of had this do-it-all role. And like you said, just a stepped-up offensive environment with an offense led by Josh Allen as opposed to Teddy Bridgewater. So in that sort of role, and I believe that he has the room to earn more than 97 targets. It's just kind of that would kind of rely on the failure from one of these other guys, though, whether it be Keon Coleman or Khalil Shakir. I think we all kind of understand that Dalton Kincaid is going to get his in terms of target volume. So if one of these guys is going to fail, I believe it would be either it'll be one of the receivers. But his ability to cross that 100 target threshold, I think, would rely on one of these guys not living up to expectations. But I do think it's within the range of outcomes, and getting that rushing work just to provide a bit of a buffer to what he's getting as a receiver. I think it boosts his value across the board, and the reports of him being used in various capacities and just as throughout the formation, it's just all positive stuff. And like you said, the big plays and like the spectacular plays, like try not to put too much weight into that, but he's had his fair share as well. He's made some nice grabs out there in training camp. There's one of those clips that made its rounds on Twitter. So there's just nothing but positive stuff coming out for this guy. And the stuff that I am buying into is the usage stuff, just because we have a history of him being this jack of all trades guy with Joe Brady.
Yeah, I love both calls. I like getting in on this offense. It started at the top again of the show when you brought up Josh Allen and the fact that you can stack this whole offense for so cheap. If we do get Josh Allen just being Josh Allen and just distributing it to these guys that are going in round 8 and after, it's going to be the way you win Best Ball Mania this year. It really is that simple sometimes, and it really could just come down to Josh Allen is still Josh Allen. He's still right on the career average of 35 touchdowns a year, 4,400 yards. You just could get his weapons for 5+ rounds cheaper than what they're going at last year, and he just does it all with those guys, and you just spread the wealth, and you get as many of them on your roster as you can. And I do love Samuel too, lining up in the backfield, taking goal lines, carries. It's great. All the training camp reports.
Well, yeah, they don't give the ball to giant James Cook at the goal line. It's literally anyone else.
Give it to Curtis Samuel.
Put your name on the list. We'll get you a goal line carry unless your name is James Cook.
Exactly. I love it. Well, we're going to also focus on one other offense in this show for our wide receivers to wrap those guys up. We're going to be on very opposite ends of the spectrum. So let's start with the lower end of the spectrum. I'm going with Andre Yoshi out of here with the Bengals, maybe the single biggest drumbeat going on in fantasy right now, and I'm playing right along with it. If you watched Monday's stream, I feel like we were ahead of this drumbeat. We kind of had that epiphany in the last round, like, why is Yoshi not drafted in every single league? And then, of course, the next few days, the drumbeat gets louder and louder, and now he's going in round 17. Not saying we started the drumbeat, but we had that epiphany. So let's break down why we were definitely right and thinking about Yoshi as a dominant last-round pick and somebody I'm still willing to go in on at his round 17 price. Hell, I'll drive this thing up to round 16, even 15 if I had to. I just don't think I'm going to need to do so. You look at just the measurables, the athletic 6'3", 205, and then according to player profile, 4.43, right there in the 89th percentile, 109.4 speed score. That's there in the 91st percentile. 10.36 catch radius, 98th percentile. You toss those in the RotoViz tool in terms of just the numbers, and they spit out who is his athletic comparable in this year's rookie class. The guy that got spit out was Rome Odunze. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that Andre Yochevez is Rome Odunze. Not even close. He didn't have close to the production that he put up in college. But we're talking about a guy at Princeton that was an All-American heptathlon in track. I mean, literally does everything possible. He can run. He can leap. He can jump. He had some really good production, 40% target share there that last year, 3rd most career touchdowns, 6th most receiving yards, 12th most receptions. Again, we're talking about Princeton. We're not like this crazy program, but he did, when he finally became that full-time football player, really go there. And he kind of became known for that contested catch guy, using the hands, boxing people out. He was a basketball player back in the day as well. And then you look at what he actually did as a rookie. Wasn't much, but when he played, he did some things. He only saw above 35% of snaps twice. One of them was in week 16. He had 4 targets, 4 catches, 36 yards, nothing great there. But in week 18, 93% of the snaps, he goes 7 targets, 5 catches, 36 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 2 red zone looks. He also played 2 games with Joe Burrow. That's it. He only got in twice. And what did he do? He caught 2 touchdowns in both of those games as a pure red zone specialist. And now what are we hearing? That he is a big slot receiver dominating as the number 3 clear guy. And of course, right now with Jamar Chase in a hold and not practicing, Yoshi's running all over the field. He's getting the outside reps. He's getting the inside reps. And he has been, according to the Athletics' Paul Derner, quote, the offensive star of camp. They don't toss that. The Athletic is pretty kind of reserved in terms of when they throw things like that out there. And so when you hear that type of smoke here, there's got to be some fire to go along with it, especially when Joe Burrow comes out and says, Andre's going to have a big year. Very excited about how he's coming along. Wherever he ends up playing, whether it's outside or inside, he's able to do it all. And so even as just the number 3, especially if it's that big slot receiver, if he ends up dominating that, I get Jermaine Burton, a really interesting prospect, a guy I was drafting a good amount of, and I won't avoid him completely now, but I don't see any reason not to go Yoshi above him at this point. I don't want to just have a week 1 brain, but yeah, I really do think this is not a crusty veteran we're talking about holding off a rookie that comes in week 6. This is a second-year player, and we talked about this last week where the receiver coach he worked with last week said, I've never seen so much improvement over an offseason than what I've seen with Yoshi. And then he also said Chase Brown as well. And this is a guy that worked with Brandon Ayuk, Dontavian Wicks, some darlings in the fantasy community. And he's saying that Yoshi took a step further than he's even seen those guys take over a single offseason. So all to add is just like, even just as the number 3 of Joe Burrow's offense, we were drafting Jermaine Burton with that idea in round 15, round 14, round 13 sometimes even. And so now that you can get this guy in round 17, you mix in the fact that, hey, if something happens to T. Higgins, something happens to Jamar Chase, that contingency upside to go along with it. He's become the guy that, like, for me last year, it was Tank Dell for so long. It then became Kyron Williams at the end of the offseason. I wish I did more with Puka Nacua. I did not. But it has become that, like, I am going to hit Yoshi in round 17, and you're not going to stop me. I'm making sure I leave the rest of my 50 drafts with Yoshi on 45 of them. I am going to hit him in every single draft here on out. I am that convinced he is going to be such a great value at where he goes. You're a Bengals fan. Am I nuts? And I know you have a Bengals receiver. We're going to talk about that. Is far less shocking than wanting exposure to Andre Yoshi. But yeah, I'm all in on this guy.
Yeah, the only reason that, at least personally, I was discounting Yoshi throughout the offseason was because I just didn't think that he would be a slot guy. I mean, he's just kind of like this bigger receiver. He like you said, athletic freak coming out of Princeton, a 9.6 on the RAS score metric. So we kind of knew what we were getting with him in year one, just kind of this raw talent out of a smaller school that could hopefully be developed. But he kind of just been always pegged as a guy who would he was just kind of pegged as a guy who would just be an outside guy. But the big news is that he is running in the slot. That's just not something that anyone really anticipated happening. They kind of thought that Charlie Jones was drafted to be the heir apparent to Tyler Boyd. Obviously, like he showed some flashes last year, but it appears that they prefer Yoshivas to Charlie Jones. And people thought that maybe Mike Gesicki, who's basically just a glorified slot receiver who's got a TE next to his name, he is possibly going to take some slot snaps, but apparently Andre's taken all of the slot snaps out of training camp, and he's just going to be doing it all. If he holds on to a full-time role, it'll be an immense value. I do still think that a timeshare is the most likely outcome, but if he's able to fend off these other guys, he's going to be an immense value. So I want to be grabbing Yoshivas, Andre, Yoshivas. But my Bengals wide receiver who I need to get some more weight on is Jamar Chase. And this is not like a stand against Jamar Chase. It is more so I am just not falling on the right side of the random number generator, the RNG on these platforms. I'm just not getting the 4 pick that often, and that he's kind of like my slotted in guy at the 4. I know that you've got some pushback on him being drafted at the 4. That's a conversation for another day, perhaps, or maybe an article coming soon to rotostreetjournal.com. But he is my guy at the number 4. I don't need to make an argument for why you should draft Jamar Chase. I mean, when a guy can year in and year out post a 50-point game, I believe he did it 2 years ago. I know he did it last year. I believe his week 17 game against the Chiefs 2 years ago was a 50-burger. So yeah, I was going to say it was like 250 yards and 2 scores. Like it had to have been a 50-point game, but you have to invest in these guys who can just simply win weeks and break the slate. And that's not even all Jamar Chase has to offer. I don't need to get into it. It's Jamar Chase. If you want to give your pushback for grabbing him at 4, I just need to end up more in the 4 slot or just taking him at 2 and 3 perhaps in these August drafts, just because I refuse to be underweight on Jamar Chase, and I am severely right now.
Yeah, it's less pushback in best ball too, because as you mentioned, 50 points. Like nobody else can do that really at any position other than maybe Achane at running back at times. And so my pushback is not necessarily in best ball at all, especially when you need to beat a field. You need that true that no one else could win if you didn't have this type of guy. That's Chase. And yes, I think in best ball 4 makes sense because of that ceiling. I do think maybe Justin Jefferson offers that very, very similar ceiling too, with maybe a little bit more floor baked in. So I do prefer him actually at 4. But even in redraft, I'm also actually going Amon-Ra St. Brown over Chase. And we could dive into that a little bit more on another show. But it really boils down to the fact that like last year, Chase was only 5 top 12 games compared to 6 for Calvin Ridley, for example. Is Chase just fancy Calvin Ridley? People are asking. I know
People
that's
not asking that.
I know Burrow was hurt. I'm not discounting that at all. I understand when Burrow and him had a full season just 2 years ago, he was the wide receiver 3 in fantasy, over 20 fantasy points per game in half PPR. We know what that is, and that's beautiful. But even then, his whole entire career, only 33% of the games have been top 12. 44% have been top 24, and that's it. Compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has had 71% top 24 games, 50% top 12 wide receiver games. So in redraft, at least, I prefer that kind of, I know every week St. Brown's going to get those layup targets. He's going to be in my lineup. He's going to get me 12 to 20 points, and boom, I can bank on it. Whereas Chase, when he doesn't hit, I mean, he has plenty of 6-point days, 4-point days, 5-point days, really weak ruiners when you're talking about a top 4 overall pick. So the consistency of St. Brown, yeah, I do prefer that in redraft. When we're talking best ball, it is about those spikes. And I get St. Brown, he does have some 30-point days. He does have some big games, but nothing even close to those spikes of Jamar Chase. So just throwing it out there that at least in redraft, I don't think Chase should be this. You click him, you don't think twice. He's kind of become he's number 4 and you don't even ask questions. And I just think there should be some questions asked. There's certainly some holes to the profile because even, again, that 20.5 points per game season with Joe Burrow 2 years ago, St. Brown last year was 21.5 points. He just had him a lot more consistently spread out. So that was more useful for you in that sense too. So just throwing it out there. I'm not a Jamar Chase hater. I love the guy. And certainly in best ball, his profile cannot be topped. But I think there's more of a case to be made in redraft that you can at least consider St. Brown. You can at least consider Justin Jefferson. And me personally, I have it ranked Jefferson and then St. Brown and then Chase. In redraft, best ball, it is the boom. I get it. But just throwing it out there. It's a little thing to consider at minimum.
It's something to consider. It probably will not sway me off, but it's a fair case, and I'm not going to argue the points made in the case. But my tight end is George Kittle. We had an extensive discussion about the value that elite tight ends can provide, and that discussion involved the definition of elite tight end, typically guys drafted in rounds 1 through 5, but Kittle is not drafted in that range this year. He is going in round 6. But unlike the argument for drafting an elite tight end is that they provide you with access to those spike weeks. The spike weeks that you probably need in the best ball playoffs. And George Kittle, he doesn't go in the range of that typical elite tight end definition now going in round 6, but he still provides you access to those spike weeks. You look at the top fantasy performances provided by tight ends last season, and George Kittle's name is just littered all over this list. He scored the 3rd most points of any tight end in a single game last season, half PPR. Only Travis Kelce in week 7 and Evan Ingram in week 14 had bigger weeks than George Kittle did. And you know why. George Kittle is a best ball tight end if you ever seen him in your life. It's just because of the offensive weaponry in San Francisco. It's going to not allow him to provide much consistency. But when it's the week where that offense funnels through George Kittle, it's going to be a big week. I mean, he's capable of 2-3 touchdown games. We've seen it in the past, and especially if Brandon Ayuk gets traded. That's also another conversation for another day. If Brandon Ayuk gets traded, it's wheels up for both Debo and George Kittle. But regardless, I anticipate that Ayuk is going to stay in San Francisco, barring some massive compensation from some team. But that is a point to be addressed if and when we get there. But George Kittle, it's simple as that. He provides you with enormous access to spike weeks. And like we've said, if his week is in the best ball playoffs and you don't have him where he finds the end zone twice, maybe 3 times, it's over for you. And you don't want to be underweight to this guy. So it's a tougher pick to stomach in redraft because you know very well he could end up with a week where he goes for 1 catch for 13 yards and he's just doing nothing for your lineup and he's more of a liability than he is an asset. But in best ball, like you can realistically fill out a roster with 3 tight ends with George Kittle, considering you only have to spend a 6th round pick on him. So you've got outs when he is not hitting your lineup, and he's having those weeks where he is kind of an afterthought within the offensive game plan for San Francisco. So you get the best of both worlds with Kittle. You don't have to have the draft capital to it's not super insane draft capital where you can only realistically convince yourself to spend one more pick on tight end, but then you get access to those spike weeks as well. So you get a little bit of everything with him, and I need to bump my exposure.
I think it's a great call, and I know you think that it's unlikely Ayuk gets traded, but the latest rumblings are, according to Matt Machiko, really plugged in Matt Machiko, the beat writer, a longtime guy. He's very cautious what he puts out there. He does say it's become more and more clear that this could actually be possible. I'm with you. I don't think it happens, but shoot, if it does, I mean, Kittle, when Ayuk or Debo is out, has been an absolute monster. We'd start drafting this guy most likely the beginning of round 5, possibly even earlier than that, if he does get traded. So yeah, getting him at round 6 right now, when you get the exposure to the most 20-point games across the last 2 seasons, even if it has been boom or bust, you made it out perfectly. In best ball, that doesn't matter. I do love going like Dalton Kincaid round 5, and you get a nice steady. I'm going to get probably 8 targets a week, and I'm going to get 10 to 12 points every week. Great. And then George Kittle in round 6, because bam, I'm going to get those 30-point days, or maybe Evan Ingram in round 7. He's a guy I love to do. I don't typically do bully tight end, but he goes so late that the opportunity cost by the time you get to round 6, I mean, I just talked about Ken Walker. I do love him there, but you really could argue that George Kittle, especially if he's your second tight end, or like your tight end 1 with a really good, like a Jake Ferguson in round 7, one of those type of setups, I think is absolutely gorgeous. So I'm with you there. I have a good amount of Kittle already, but I'm never opposed to getting more. My tight end pick is also kind of just reflective on an offense I want to make sure I'm getting more of. I don't think I have enough of, and that's Luke Musgrave and just the Packers in general. I saw I was a little underweight to Jordan Love, and he's a tricky one. It's like, oh man, like I want this offense, but who's the receiver going to be every single day? It's a new rotation. Is it Dontavian Wicks only playing 20% of the snaps with the starters? Jaden Reed's only playing 60%. Is Romeo Doubs the true number 1? Why don't we just avoid the headache and just get the guy who could be an absolute monster at the hardest position to find monsters at in Luke Musgrave, 6'6", that runs like a gazelle, a 4.6 140, top 90th percentile there in athletic speed score and 40 dash time. And before he got hurt, 85% snap share last year, 3rd most targets on the Packers as well in that span. And we saw deep. Musgrave was 11th in deep targets. Average depth of target, 7.5, was also 11th. Yards per target, 7.7, also 11. 98.5 PFF receiving grade on deep targets was 4th best. He just does. I know Tucker Kraft. He really came on, did solid things late. Team loves him. He's a great blocker. I get all that. But he's a kind of hit you, chips out. He's there. He gets a couple yards after the catch, and that's it. You can actually scheme around Luke Musgrave and this deep speed, this size. You saw that touchdown in the playoffs as well, deep against the Cowboys. So to me, this is an explosive guy at the tight end position going around pick 150 right now in an offense that I want more pieces of, but it's kind of tough to pick. What would I get? Where do I go? Well, maybe that if this guy does end up being the every down tight end, and even if not, you know Matt LaFleur is going to scheme some huge games for this guy. So at minimal and best ball, I think you're going to get some nice spike weeks for a guy that seemed to just be hitting his stride right before he got hurt. I think he could be a really, really big blow-up candidate on an offense I want to continue to get more pieces of.
Yeah, personally, I don't have a super strong read on Luke Musgrave. I just click him when he comes around, and I'm building out these Packers stacks just because it makes sense. But that is a pretty compelling case, and I'm also underweight on him, so probably need to bump that up. Tucker Kraft activated off the PUP this week. So potentially a bit of a hit to his value, but I do still think that Musgrave is the favorite. If someone is going to run away with the tight end 1 job, it will be Luke Musgrave. And like you said, just kind of grabbing picks or grabbing pieces of this offense, regardless of who it is a sound investment. I've had my reservations regarding Jaden Reed throughout the offseason, but we're about to make our pick here. We'll probably have our choice of Jefferson or one of these running backs. And I have not updated my ranks to reflect the Puka Nacua injury, so just disregard that for now. Where I guess that can be our first talking point in draft. Where are you taking Puka Nacua now?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because you don't want to overreact. Minor knee injury, expected to be back by week 1. Did Jefferson fall to us? No, I would take. I know we went Brees last time. I did bump Brees to the clear number 2 running back for me, though.
Did you?
I did.
We can talk about that in a minute too.
The latest comments from about Tyler Algier, I don't want to overreact. It probably means nothing. I think all these guys are set up for monster seasons. I love hero running back. It's still my favorite approach this year. I've been doing even more and more of it in best ball as quote unquote more casuals come in there. Running back prices are going up a little bit. Receiver prices are coming down. So I love getting an early running back. Hall's my clear number 2 at this point, though. I was looking at it, like the number 2 running back in the worst possible setup last year, and now he gets Aaron Rodgers. Definitely more touchdowns per game coming. He had 1 carry inside the 5-yard line last year. Seriously, 1. I mean, it's going to definitely be such a better setup for this guy, and it's going to be for Bijan Robinson too. But to me, I think Bijan has a clear-cut number 2 behind him that's really solid in Tyler Algier. Maybe Braylon Allen is, maybe he's not. We don't really know that there. They're already talking about wanting to make sure Tyler Algier gets his 2. I don't fully buy it. I think both these guys are going to be monsters. But especially to the line improvements for Breece Hall, you bring in Tyron Smith. You draft a top 10 overall offensive tackle. This line could be one of the top 5 in the league if everything bends right, if they get health on their side. I'm all about Breece Hall. I know you asked about Puka Nacua, which I did not answer. If he falls to us here at like 16, I'm all about it. I did bump him down to 16 on my rankings. I did end up bumping Cooper Kupp up to about 22, 23. It's one of those things where I don't expect it to linger, but we also had Sean McVay tell us last year, like, Cooper Kupp, he's going to be back. He's fine. Small injury. And we saw how that went. And I know Puka's younger, but I would be lying if I said there's not a little hint of worry after what happened with Cooper Kupp last year. So he came down to 16 for me. What do you think?
I'm no like doctor guy. I have like no medical background. Like but I understand like how like to a degree how these injuries work for NFL players, and I feel like we can't like apply the failure and the disappointment of like the coach speak regarding Cooper Kupp last season versus what we're seeing this year. I'll continue on with that when we make our pick. Definitely wide receiver here. Probably Olave, Devontae. That's probably my 2 here.
I like them both. I mean, is it too crazy to say Cooper Kupp here?
I think it is. I think 18 is a bit pushing it.
You pick your favorite of those 2. I don't really have much exposure to Olave, so I'd be happy to bump that up a little bit.
Yeah, I went Olave. But getting back to the Nacua Kupp, it was a soft tissue injury for a guy who was pushing 30 last year. Like soft tissue things can be recurring and nagging, but for Nacua, it kind of just like you see the clip, it just kind of looked like he banged his knee, like as simple as that. It's not something that I feel like needs to be a massive concern for something that could be lingering. It's just like you got a bum knee for a couple of weeks, like. I obviously this is pure speculation, but perhaps a thing that you like miss 1 game in season. Maybe you don't miss any time at all in season. Yeah. It's not like one of those things that's a huge thing, but just given the fact that it's preseason and he's one of the more valuable players, he's not fighting for a roster spot at this point anymore. So they can just give him the time to rest up and just make sure he's coming back at 100%. Because, like I said, just like the soft tissue stuff with an older guy in Kupp last year, that's, I think, much more of a red flag than a younger guy just banging his knee. So I am willing and will be scooping up discounts on Nacua. I would have grabbed him there at 18.
Absolutely. You can get these unique combinations now if it continues to fall. You're not going to get many Breece Puka teams out there. Maybe the next few weeks until we get full confirmation he's back, you'll start to see that. But we've had, again, however many drafts without people being able to do Bijan and Puka, Breece
like
and Puka.
60% of DBMs.
Yeah, so exactly. So that would be a unique combo. I'm certainly going to be buying it on it. All that to say, though, I know I was kind of joking about Cooper Kupp right there, and we see him go there right there at the top of round 3. The other thing that I was reading, and I'll shoot you my notes over on this, actually. I was reading Jeremy Fowler has a good piece. It's an ESPN Insider piece about his visits to all these training camps and the notes, and then when he talks to the coaches. I love those ones. And The Athletic does a great piece that's very similar where they talk about their fantasy takeaways from being there and also talking to the coaches. And his big thing was Cooper Kupp is the clear number 1. Like Puka looks great. He's getting some good things schemed to him, but Kupp is healthy, and he is the clear top guy here. And so, yeah, I get it. Like, I'd rather have Puka. He's younger. But if this is like Cooper Kupp's back, and maybe it was just 2 bad, unlucky years, and we get a stretch of like Kupp just being Kupp again, that I know I was kind of joking about him in mid-round too, but like I'm telling you, like I would not be shocked at all if he destroys Chris Olave in scoring this year. If he really is just that number one guy. So I'm in. I'm willing to keep going him. So yeah, we unfortunately Kyron didn't fall. I was hoping Kyron we could go running.
Yeah, or Ayuk.
Yeah, I like going either Diggs or Dell. I think you have more Dell on the season, so I'm cool with going Diggs here.
Yeah, Tank Dell is my highest owned player in basketball right now. So, like I like the player. I don't want him to be my highest owned player, so I will be slowing down to a degree on Tank Dell. It was just so easy to click him when he was there in the 40s before. You could get him in mid-round 4 pretty easily, and now people were talking about, I can't remember exactly who, but people were drumming up Tank Dell, saying he was going to be a late round 3 pick, and sure enough, here we are having to take Tank Dell close to pick 30 as opposed to pick 40. So I'm glad I got my
number one there, though. I'll tell you, I was writing him in the draft guide, writing him up. Like, if he's the most productive there, he was the most productive last year, and his game's full with Nico Collins. Had more targets, had more yards when they both were on the field for 60% or more of the snaps together. It was Tank Dell. He was the guy that Stroud always comes to and says, like, the number one receiver I'd build an offense around. I love him. I do. It'll be interesting to see how Diggs kind of mixes in there, but it's good to get exposure to all of them. So I'm cool getting some Diggs here. As Thaddeus reminds us, it says, get your guys, as he always starts off. Great to see every time, Thaddeus. I love your commitment, man. You're here every time we go live. You're always adding good, valuable insight. So thank you, brother. It's always good to see our guy, Thaddeus.
There's one thing I've learned.
What's that?
I was going to say, if there's one thing I've learned, is you just got to go and get your guys.
A reminder every time, and I love it. People forget DK is still an alien walking among us. It's true. We were talking about the Seattle offense. If he plays that Rome Odunze deep roll, get in motion, they talked about wanting to move him around and feed him in unique different ways. So, yeah, I love DK this year. He's somebody, if we were going to talk about another receiver, we didn't do our honorable mentions, but DK was going to be there for it. It sounds like Thaddeus does like Pacheco as well. He does go, as we see here, 37th. He's starting to go right there at the turn very often. And so my goal of bumping him up, I was going to say maybe we look at him where we're going, but not there for us. But I see who you queued up there. I love both those guys. I do prefer Josh Allen if he falls to us.
Where we've got Bills Mafia 5 in front of us. So my hopes are slim, but we'll see.
Hey, maybe. Maybe he'll disgrace the Mafia. Who knows? I mean, even Amari Cooper at this point, like where we need wide receivers, wide receiver 3 in an offense is going to be more spread, more pass happy than it has been in years past. I do like Cooper. I do think the play is one of these two, though. Now that Etienne went there, one of Allen.
So the narrative on like the spread, like pass happy stuff. Oh, and we have our choice of both. I'm probably going to go Allen here.
You talked about you want more exposure to him. Let's put it to the test, baby. I love it.
Just because we can get pieces in the following rounds.
I mean, Kincaid might fall to us in the next round, even though you're not a huge Kincaid guy. Because
I would do it.
We have Travis Kelce. Like, I love the term. It's called like a shield at this point, where Kelce's going to go. Andrews, McBride. Like, if Kelce had already gone, it's very unlikely that Kincaid makes his way back. It's still not great chances, but we have 3 shields now still in front of where Kincaid goes. I think there's a decent chance he can make it back to us. And we get that stack. And if he doesn't, maybe James Cook is there. We get a nice little piece to stack with Allen. So I love it. It's a guy you wanted more of. And I am all about getting as much Josh Allen as I can in these last few weeks of drafting here. So I think it's great.
I wanted to ask you about the Browns offense. So like the narrative behind the spread offense, like more pass happy stuff. I understand it. Like no Nick Chubb, add Jerry Jeudy, bring in Ken Dorsey. But do you have any hesitancy on that philosophical change coming, because Ken Dorsey isn't going to be calling plays? It's still going to be Stefanski, and who knows? Like maybe he's just kind of like that boomer type that just leans into how he wants to do things regardless of personnel. I think Stefanski's a smart coach. I mean, 2-time coach of the year for a reason. Took this team to a winning record and a playoff berth despite a decimated O-line and quarterback room last year. But is it possible that they don't adapt in a way that we might be expecting?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I did in that same piece, but again, everybody should check it out if you have ESPN Insider by Fowler. It was a lot of quotes, including from Stefanski, about why they brought in Dorsey. We wanted to modernize. We wanted to get more pass happy. We want to get more with the times. We want to play faster. And it's kind of crazy because the Browns led the NFL last year in plays per game. They were top 5 in pace, and yet they're still talking about wanting to get even faster. And we saw that with Dorsey throughout his times in Buffalo, spread it out, no huddle, right? It was top 3 in the league every year. So I do buy it. I think he's going to still call plays, but I think weirdly he's like from what I've heard, I've got these like a couple interesting Brown sources, and they've talked about how like Andrew Barry doesn't love Stefanski. And for whatever reason, I think he's a great coach and he should love him. I think he just does not recognize what he has, but like, they want it to be a certain way, and I think he's going to be kind of forced to either way. Now, does Watson execute it? I don't know. I'm not totally sold on Deshaun Watson being the guy, but hey, Jameis Winston's there waiting in the wings behind him. That would be fun. Jameis Winston-led spread offense. Like, oh, that could be great. And if Watson hits the ceiling, then awesome. But I think they're going to give it a go. They seem earnest in their comments. And plus Nick Chubb, the guy that would kind of change that offense from doing what you don't have your heartbeat anymore. So, maybe they do have to give it a go. They got to give Watson a chance to be the guy that they sold the farm for. So I think they talked a lot about how about this move was trying to set up Watson to really see if he is that true guy here. So I think they
go. Yeah. Here we got we can pull the trigger on round 5, Rashee Rice or Calvin Ridley or Godwin.
Yeah, I think maybe get some Rice here. It's kind of that point where we still haven't heard anything. So
yeah, no news is good news. That's kind of how you're taking it.
I guess so. Not really, but you also get some Chiefs and Texans week 15 or 16 correlation there, which I like. It's too bad Kincaid went a couple picks ahead of us there.
I thought we might be able to grab him there, but
Lamar Jackson really falling, huh?
You can't really. Hindsight's 2020, but knowing Lamar Jackson would be there at 55 and still falling, pretty brutal.
The Mark Andrews team really played it well, huh? He took Andrews that early. He probably couldn't even imagine though. Lamar, he might get sniped right here though, even though this guy's in Florida. Wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, and it would make sense, but this is just too good of a value here on Lamar. I tried like the Zay Flowers round 3, Mark Andrews, and he does get sniped. Ooh,
he's
brutal.
Pissed.
I tried that one time where I went Zay Flowers round 3, Mark Andrews round 4, and Lamar did not make it back to me. And I was like, the third pick of round 5. So it was like, oh, why did I take Zay this high? I was trying to get cute with it.
I mean, you can play that game with other like the pocket passers, but it's just so much harder to get it to work with the Lamar, just the mobile guys. I mean, for some reason people do it with Hurts a lot. Like they'll just let him kind of come around the board, but it's so much harder to do with some of those mobile dual threat type of profiles as opposed to is with those guys like Burrow and Dak and whatnot.
Yeah, he did have Pittman there, so this is what people talk about, baking in outs. Like, it sucks you got sniped on Lamar there, but Pittman, you can go Anthony Richardson, no problem at all. So that's a good solid like bake in a bunch of outs for your squad type of motto. I know we could definitely go your guy Kittle, who you talking about wanting to get more of. That's totally fine with me in this range. I mean, at the top of the queue there, I know Jaden Reed only played 60% of snaps in an August game. And I'm not saying we should completely ignore it and discount it and toss it out there, but I still think he's one of the most explosive playmakers on that team. I think in best ball where we don't have to fully get it right every single week, he's going to have. I mean, there was a stretch where he was the number 3 receiver in fantasy for about 5-6 weeks. And I don't know. I'm totally open. And now Kittle goes. I'm okay with Jaden Reed.
Yeah. So I guess I can make my Jaden Reed have my Jaden Reed discussion now. Yeah, I've been banging the drum on like the limited routes for the whole offseason. I mean, like you look at like the talent and the production from him last year, it's promising. But yeah, you'd think that someone who is that talented and produces in that capacity would see a bump in their route participation. He was sub 60% last year, but where's it going to come from? Like, are they going to sit Christian Watson? No. Are they going to, like, some people might debate me on that, but no, the answer is no. They love Romeo Dobbs. They're going to mix Wicks in there. Like, he's just straight up a 3 wide receiver set guy. They ran 3 wide receiver sets. It was 63%, 11 personnel at 63% of their snaps last year. Like, so you're kind of, if he doesn't expand into a role where he's playing in 2 wide receiver sets, you're looking at a guy whose route participation is capped at 63%, as long as their offensive philosophy keeps up, unless they're running 11 personnel at a higher rate next year. So it's concerning. You can't be drafting a guy in the typically he goes in the 5th round, but now he's here in the 6th round for us. But a guy in the 5th round who's only going to play for 60% of the plays, like, you just need ridiculous efficiency. And he got there last year thanks to ridiculous touchdown numbers. It was 10 touchdowns on 75 touches. So it's just he fell very much on the right side of touchdown variance, and he's got the talent to produce those kinds of plays, which is why I am nervous about fading him. But at the end of the day, it's a 5th round pick who's not playing a ton. And I've kind of been talking about this throughout the offseason, and that beat reporter, or that tweet, whatever it was, of the kind of snaps breakdowns from the open practice is kind of like opening people's eyes. And yeah, I mean, can you really spend this high of draft capital on a guy who is going to play less than 70% of snaps? I'm hesitant.
Yeah, I get the hesitation, but I mean, he also could get in the backfield. LaFleur is from the Shanahan tree. That, like, would you be shocked at all if they, and the LaFleur tree, if he just with McVay rather, the 3 wide receiver sets dominate things. Maybe they do just realize, like, yeah, our assets are our 4 great receivers. We're going to have 3 of them out at all times. And even still, maybe not. He's so damn good with the touches he gets, and just so versatile that at least in round 6, round 5 was definitely an overprice. But now he's going in round 6. I can get on board with that as a wide receiver 3-4. I think it's a nice price for a very explosive playmaker. Maybe Christian Watson should be going ahead of him. He seems to be the clear cut, like, I'm always in here. But that's the thing, is Watson always gets hurt. Like, it's only going to take one injury for Jaden Reed to be a every down player. Like, yeah, I'm okay with it. Like, maybe not. Maybe that's Wicks who gets smoothed in. I'm not. Who knows? But it did kind of suck that both 2 guys, Ken Walker and George Kittle, we both highlighted as guys we want more of, go pick right before us. Unfortunately, we're about to pick, but Ken Walker getting compared to Barry Sanders, maybe a lofty, but in that sense of like 2 yards or 50 yards to the house, like, that is Ken Walker. That's the type of game he plays. So I totally get it. And it does look like, I like Evan Ingram here, or Jim Connor, who we just talked about potentially bumping our exposure to. I would not be opposed to either.
I prefer addressing tight end, especially on a Breece Hall team.
Yeah, that's fine with me. And maybe Connor makes it back to us. Probably doesn't.
Well, we're locked into Samuel most likely with our next pick. We gotta get some pieces here with Allen. So that was my thinking there. Kind of knowing our next pick was locked up and wanting to address tight end before it dries up.
You'll see, though. I mean, I've seen Samuel going naked to a bunch of teams at the turn right now. It's wide receiver thirst at its finest, but it makes sense. A guy that's going to get maybe 100 touches in a Josh Allen offense. So yeah, I hope he makes it back to us. He certainly would be the pick if he does. But don't be stunned. I've been in this spot where I've drafted like Breece and then J.A. and been like, got sniped on Samuel. I'll get Shakir on the next way back. And then Shakir goes before it gets to me. I'm just like, damn it. Kincaid didn't go to me. And now Allen is one of the quarterbacks you can play naked, because in week 17, maybe he just runs for 3 touchdowns. And it's like nobody but Allen gets there. I don't want to. I'd rather have pieces attached to him, because he does bring the ships with him when he rises most of the time. But it's not a quarterback where I'm like, I'm naked, I'm dead. Like, it's not a pocket passer in that sense where it's
100%.
I can't not have him nude.
100%.
I always wonder, like, what my wife thinks when she's like, Josh Allen naked on my team. I'm always talking about that from the kitchen. Like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
What's going on over there?
James asking a good question. We'll address in 1 second as we have our pick and 2 more here, James. But afterwards, asking, how do preseason injuries affect how fantasy managers should draft? And I think the obvious answer from the Stars, like it's obviously case by case, how serious is the injury? I think you have to weigh it in, especially if it's potentially lingering into the season. Connor goes. That would have been real nice if he had.
Yeah.
I guess we're going Samuel as long as he falls, which I probably just jinxed right here.
So Bills Mafia? You think Bills Mafia might grab him?
I know we've been worried about Bills Mafia sniping us a few times here, but so far so good in terms of leaving us our bills that we need. We'll see how it plays out.
He's gonna time out and
nice.
So I'm gonna take Samuel here. Easy pick.
Easy pick. A guy we want, and hopefully Shakir makes it back there as well. So how do preseason injuries affect how managers should draft? I think, again, case by case, but let's talk about like DeAndre Hopkins, for example. Let's kind of use a couple examples that are actionable right now, and not just talk about the theory of it. I dropped DeAndre Hopkins to about pick 100 right now. He's going in my 68 all the way down to 100. Could he be back by week 1? Yes. Could he be less than 100 all year? That's really the risk. You got to look at the type of injury like Justin Herbert, another one. Plantar fasciitis, like that doesn't really go away. That's like the worst thing to possibly hear, other than, of course, a season ender and he's done and you're never going to see him. But those type of nagging little injuries are a lot different than like a bruise that just like eventually the bruise is going to heal and you're going to be better. It's those pulls of the soft tissue or those lingering foot like things that I really do try to shy away from. Like if they're already dinged up, everybody gets hurt throughout the season. You don't want to enter the season with damaged goods to start because your guys are, by the time you get to week 17, everybody's going to be hurt. So I don't want to start here, especially too when you think of guys like Hopkins trying to learn a new offense. He does have a pre-established chemistry with Will Levis, so that's good. But if it's like somebody on a new team and they're starting to establish chemistry, Justin Herbert's injury, how does that impact Lad McConkey? Does Josh Palmer get a bump up because they already have an established chemistry now? Those are the things I try to weigh, James, when I'm thinking about preseason injuries. And typically, unless it's like a screaming bargain, this guy is going 40 picks below, and you're going to have him back within a couple of weeks. I guess Jonathan Brooks is another one, right? Like he didn't get hurt though in the preseason. It's more so just like what his timeline is going to be, and now we know it's a couple games later than maybe people expect. He's not going to be there week 1. That's different though. He didn't suffer the injury; he's only getting healthier versus guys that are like getting hurt in camp. So I know I threw a bunch at the wall there, but did anything stick to you, Mike, or anything else to address there?
I've actually looked into this a little bit. Matthew Betts of the Fantasy Footballers, he's kind of their like in-house medical guy. He took a look back last year at the guys who quote unquote saw buying the injury dip, quote unquote, with these guys. Like they see a discounted price because there's some injury concerns. And last year the number was pretty damning. It was ugly. It was only 21% of players who who saw a reduced price due to injury. Only 21% of them ended up exceeding ADP expectations. So it was a largely unsuccessful strategy last season. And I'll continue here with my explanation after we make our pick. But we could be the first ones to the Chase Brown sweepstakes here.
I was just going to recommend that because there is the world where Khalil Shakir makes it back to people. Like I don't feel like a ton of people love going him when they don't have Josh Allen. Chase Brown's not going to make it back to us, and we do need a running back. I love going him here. I think that's a great pick.
So, going back to the injury discount stuff, largely unsuccessful last year. I did not personally dive into the data from like even years past, but it was wildly unsuccessful last year. Only 21% of guys paying off, and the guys who did pay off, it was a pretty common theme. The poster boy of it, and like I think the reason that people may be willing to buy into it at a large degree was Breece Hall. 4th round price tag last year, coming off the ACL, ended up going nuclear, going bananas, winning leagues at cost. But for the most part, everyone other than him, it was one, younger players. Basically, everyone was 25 or younger. And 2, they just had ridiculously low expectations to overcome. Like one of the other key guys was Kyler Murray. He was going at the end of the drafts or towards the end of drafts because he had had he wasn't going to be back until midseason, so people weren't expecting him to do much. And then the other guy who paid off in a big way was Devon Achane. He had that MCL thing in the preseason, or maybe it was meniscus, either or knee injury that tanked his stock a little bit in the preseason, and obviously ended up paying off. So there's success stories, but they're overblown relative to the failures. So I try, you have to evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. And especially with the ACL stuff, understanding the significance of the single ligament versus the multi-ligament. But really, it's paid off for young guys who just have a low bar to overcome. So I get really nervous when there's a quote-unquote buying the dip for an injured guy. And especially, like you talked about, DeAndre Hopkins, a guy who's older. And I was in on DeAndre Hopkins before. I thought he was a good pick.
Yeah,
I'm tempted to buy the dip, but I am quite nervous.
I took him at like 94 last night in a best ball mania. And like, I think at that point, the veteran is a little risky, but it's also the idea like this guy has done it time and time again. Like, he could just walk back in. He's already played with Levis, but maybe not. Maybe this offense is a little more complex. Maybe he did need that time. So yeah, it is. I think it's great data to back up that like buying the dip seems sexy. I got this discounted price. It doesn't really tend to work out. The things linger, the time to get yourself in gear. Now you're shaking off the rust when everybody else is playing well. I think you just starred. I love either Singletary or I just saw you just star Javonte Williams. I think that correlates well with Chase Brown's another guy. If he was an honorable mention at running back, I want to add more Javonte. The clear number one, slimmer, 264 touches last year while he's hurt. I like Javonte Williams a lot. We've made the comparison plenty of times on this. Is like, could this be the Miami backfield of last year, where we know that 12 of 17 years of Sean Payton backfields have been top 2 in overall fantasy points for the running back position. We just got to get the guys right, and Javonte is seeming like the clear best bet. Might be Estime, might be probably not. Jaleel is the true ceiling guy, but may catch 60 balls himself. There's going to be pieces here, and I think it's a backfield that's worth attacking. And Javonte, I think his price, he's going to play in the preseason. He's going to look like the Javonte of old, and we're going to see him come up to like round 8. And so I want to get my bags now. I love the Javonte pick there.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the direct Miami comparison just because I don't think that like top 5 ceiling is realistic for any of these guys, like we saw with Mostert last year, as well, just because of the offensive quality. Like, I don't think that a 70-point game is within the range of outcomes for this this Denver offense this year. So that's what's holding back like the true ceiling. But yeah, just like finding someone who significantly outperforms ADP just because of the murkiness as well as the value that Sean Payton provides. Yeah, I think that they are similar in that way. Sean Payton and Mike McDaniel, both very good at providing the running backs with opportunities to rack up fantasy points. Like you mentioned, 12 of 17 seasons for Sean Payton's backfields being top 2 in terms of cumulative fantasy scoring. So one of the best, if not the best ever at getting his running backs fantasy points. And that's just largely due to his usage of running backs in the passing game. And we hit on that pretty heavily within these last couple of shows. So don't need to go on more than I have. So I think I've said it before. I'm looking to have pieces, and I am overweight on every single running back in this backfield. The big 3, rather, Javonte, Jaleel, and Estime. I am overweight on all 3 of them.
I think it's a smart backfield to be overweight on. Joe Saviano, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the comments saying AI is the new AI in fantasy. Hey, if Yoshi becomes the AI of fantasy, we'll be doing pretty damn well for ourselves. And we're building out a Bengals-Broncos thing right now. I think it's pretty likely in round 17 we'll be also calling Yoshi's name. It does change the way I draft, too, because like I've always loaded up on wide receivers, but now I'm really liking some of these later receivers. I know Labe is a guy that's emerging at running back, too. But between Yoshi, I feel like who else am I often stacking up in these late? McMillan, he goes a little earlier, but he's definitely a guy I've started to stack up late. I feel like there's just more of these later receivers emerging. Jalen Tolbert as like the clear number 3, a guy that we liked, we talked about as a late round guy that we were taking in our Dak builds early, is now a guy that I'll take even without Dak, just because he's making highlight play after highlight play. Like these wide receiver 3s, we talked about it. entering training camp, wide receiver threes and explosive offenses. What are we watching? And we're starting to get some real clarity around both Cowboys and Bengals. So I'm starting to kind of draft with I'll get my early 3-4 receivers, and I might not hit it until rounds 16, 17, and 18. And I might go Jalen McMillan. I might go Yoshi, and then I might go Tolbert. After I had 4 receivers in the first 5 rounds, I might just avoid the position for a while. So it does change how I've been drafting. And a good request here from Joe that we'll tackle in just 1 second, but we do have our pick coming up here. So who are we eyeing here, Mo?
So I've got Polk queued up here. I'm not super partial. I think we could grab one of these running backs realistically, Edwards, Corum, Eckler. I don't have a strong preference here.
I like one of the receivers you queued up right. Just to kind of protect us. I have so much Gus already. I don't need more, even though I do love him.
I'm going to time out here and go Polk.
Yeah, I like Polk. I have a big bag of Polk already. Williams is the one that might make it back even to us again.
Exactly. Yeah. I wasn't really going to go Williams there. If you've listened to this show, I had no interest in taking Mike Williams there. He's queued up purely for the sake of correlation.
Yes, I know you don't like him. And then on the way back, if Corum, Gus, Eckler just goes. I do like getting some Eckler mixed in here, though. I do think he could be in for a nice rebound. I think Dowdle on the way back makes some sense for us, a guy that you talked about wanting to add. I like putting him in this running back room here where I feel pretty good. I feel great about Brees. I feel pretty good that Javonte at minimum is going to be good early season viability. Chase Brown is that wild card that, there goes Dowdle. Damn. That's too bad. But and it goes Gus. I would have taken Gus had he made it back to us. It just would have been too much.
Sure, you would have.
This is where Corum, if Corum comes to us here, contingency upside on this build makes a lot of sense. We have 3 guys, especially if Chase is that actual guy for the Bengals. We already have our starters. Let's toss a guy on the bench that things break right is, top 3, right?
Guy with 2 running backs, I would venture to say he grabs Corum here, but you never know.
You never know. And we can come up with our backup plans. We have to start looking a little bit at our stacks, and Drake May now, the door there opened up.
He's going to time out and take Corum. Yeah, that's unfortunate. He times out and takes Corum. I
like Lloyd here. I like Chandler. Keep scrolling. There's a few other. Daddle's gone, right? Yeah, Daddle's gone. And we already have our Bronx. I like going maybe Lloyd here. I love Jalen Wright too, but we can maybe get him on the way back. I think Lloyd goes well with Jaden Reed. And then even Chandler in the next round, if he comes back to us, start correlating that game a little bit.
Exactly.
Musgrave might make some sense with the Packers thing we're kind of building out. As a guy we talked about potentially trying to get more. I do like Hunter Henry, though. We got the Polk thing going.
We're going to have to set something up backdoor here. This is the first time you're going to hear it out of me. I was hoping to get Mike Williams there in an effort to grab Aaron Rodgers. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's him and I've run into this issue. Him and Allen have the same bye week, and at quarterback, I really do. 20 points is a lot of times. I looked through my portfolio last year, a couple third place teams that were 15 points away, 8 points away, and I didn't have quarterback bye weeks, but you just kind of think what if that was the thing,
Yeah,
and then I have to force in a JJ McCarthy in the last round on a Josh Allen team. It's I don't want to do something like that. So it's a couple quarterbacks. There's the Lamar and Stroud one.
That's
you're not usually investing that much capital, but there are a few that's the week 17 matchup is also the bye week, which is a little annoying when you're trying to stack up the game as a whole.
That is rather unfortunate.
Yeah, it can be a pain in the ass for sure there, but we'll come up with it. I know you don't. I saw Stafford's kind of lingering there, and I know we don't have a single piece there, but I do think there's some viability to Demarcus Robinson. If he wraps around, is the clear number 3. It sounds like he's a star of camp. Parkinson's really starting to separate. I know we laughed about it the last time when we took Stafford and then got blocked out on Robinson. But if you can pull off Stafford, Robinson, and backdoor Parkinson too, I don't think it's the worst thing. And the Baker Mayfield, Bucky Irving, Jalen McMillan, that's a backdoor I've snuck myself into. We'll see how sneaking myself into an ugly Tampa Bay backdoor stack works out. I'll probably be grounded for sneaking in too late to that backdoor. But hey, you never know. I don't mind the late backdoor buck stack either.
I have not attempted or pulled that one off just yet, but I don't know. Like,
well, we have Carr, by the way. Olave, Juwan Johnson, Olave.
Yeah.
Like we have Carr at our disposal. I think we're fine. When Carr does have the same bye week as Josh Allen, though. That's one thing. Like I don't think about it too often, but like when we were debating that second receiver, round 2 receiver, like maybe you go Adams because of you're not going to even backdoor Adams, but like you think about the bye week type of stuff going on there. It's wild what you kind of have to think through. But you're about to be up. I told Joe we're going to get to his request. I think absolutely, Joe. One thing, and we're going to make our pick, and then we'll get back to that. So you have Hunter Henry queued up. I imagine Musgrave's gone. I do love Jalen Wright here. I know Stafford, you wouldn't even want to entertain the back door there with DeMarcus.
I would go for it.
You want versus the Jets, too.
You want to try it?
We can try it because it's like.
All right. Let's do it.
I heard a good one on Crane's pod the other day. And I know all the research is so overwhelmingly in favor of stacking, and it should be. It really is deservedly so. All that to say is, I guess the other thing we could be looking at is Bo Nix, too. We could have done because we have the Bengals-Broncos thing kind of going. Mims and Nix. We don't have to worry about that now. Now we just have to pray that DeMarcus Robinson falls to us. A scary place to be in.
Bad spot to be in.
A bad spot to be in. There's no doubt about it. But it was a unique thinker. What was his name? I can't remember, but it was they were talking more about FPPC and like horse racing and stuff. And the guy was just talking about how like everybody is just all about stacking. And it does, again, make a ton of sense. Marvin Mims goes there, so our backdoor wouldn't have potentially worked. But then it's like, if you overforce the stacking and you pass up on these great values just for the sake of completing your stack, whereas, late you build these like weird, unique stacks, which a Robinson right here, a Colby Parkinson late, that would be weird and unique. It's probably very unlikely that Stafford gets there and one of Kupp and Puka don't go bananas. But there were games last year where like Stafford threw 4 touchdowns and none of them went to Kupp or to Puka. They went to like Kyron. They went, so there's weird ways. I don't know. But the whole it was just one of those weird podcasts where it's like, maybe a new like a Stafford and we're probably going to get our guy. Fingers crossed. I don't want to ruin it. But I think it's just weird. It's a way to get different from what everybody else with Stafford's going to do.
You can talk yourself into it 100%. It's and I agree. It's definitely different from what the typical Stafford drafter is doing. I mean, basically no one is grabbing Stafford unless they have one of those top 2 guys. It's part of the reason you see him available late in drafts so often. So, I mean, we'll grab Parkinson. We'll make it a priority, and it'll be stacked to a degree. I mean, he's got positive buzz coming out of camp. I don't know how amped up you can get yourself about Colby Parkinson, especially when Tyler Higbee could be returning during the most critical point of the season. But you got to do what you got to do in the name of not the pure naked Matt Stafford.
I think it'll be a good play. Again, what if a Puka injury lingers? Like now your only weapon that you don't have is Kupp, and there is a real world where that's like okay, like Stafford's gonna get his. Like he's going to throw for 300 a game. He's probably gonna throw. So. You're just playing it weird. You're playing it weird.
You can talk yourself into like whatever. Like literally, you can talk yourself into anything. Like, you're like Nakua is injured in week 17, and I now have the wide receiver 2 for Matt Stafford, and Kupp's also injured, and he's the wide receiver 1. Like there's like a lot of situations like
Colby Parkinson's the Tyler Higbee of like 5 years ago, where it's just unstoppable.
Well, what was that stretch that Higbee had? It was like 6 weeks where he was like the wide or the tight end like 5 or something like that.
No, he was the tight end 1. Like he was like legitimately, he was bananas. It was so epic, and I have it was one of our first years of doing this, so I have the note somewhere about it. But while I pull that up, we'll finally get to you, Joe. I love this request because it is redraft. I'm glad you're asking for it because redraft is so different. That's what my draft guide is so focused on right now. And I do best ball spins like after each round I break down. I also talk about like, yeah, this is the wide receiver oasis in redraft. It's actually flipped. It's the running back oasis in best ball. So, you're going to have to switch your mindset in those things. But I do focus on a lot of those differences. I think it would be a great show. We just did not even a mock draft, but a real draft for the RSJ League. That's going to be on the website. The full draft will be up there. We all analyzed our favorite teams, our favorite picks, and then we're going to go pick by pick. Each writer is going to write about their strategy. So you're going to have that to look forward to on rotostreetjournal.com. But I also do think a show that maybe we pull up that draft board and we review it, or we just do a live mock and talk it through too, because I think my strategy now that I've dug, I wish I had dug a little bit deeper before I did our league draft. I didn't love my team, and I definitely don't love my team now. And I now, knowing the redraft ADPs better, I would have attacked it a lot differently than what I did. The whole strategy is so much different than best ball. It's just a different game. And to summarize it, I really want to prioritize hero running back, if not 2 running backs in my first 3. I really want an elite quarterback. Receivers, I mean, you can get Drake London round 3. You can get Cooper Kupp round 4. And then you can get round 5, Amari Cooper. Then round 6, you can get round 8 is Chris Godwin. Round 6 is Malik Neighbors. Like it's absurd. The type of receivers you can get. You could truly not take a receiver in your first 4 picks and have like 4 high-end wide receiver 2s that one of them might be your number 1 wide receiver. It's wild. So yes, I do think absolutely breaking down some more redraft is in the cards. I just got to finish this guide. Like I'm in the cave. I got to get the guide done. I'm on my last section of it. And then it's going to be out. Hopefully you guys can support it and buy it. And I will be doing a lot more just like redraft focus shows with that brain done. All righty. Thank you for asking that, Joe. And I'm glad you're still here with us. What are you looking at here, Mo?
Do you want to go three tight ends here with Ingram? We could grab Henry and go 3 tight ends with Parkinson.
Yeah, I like going with Ingram. It's a little bit weak, though. Is there anything? Keep Henry at the top of the queue, but there's nothing.
There's nothing. No, it's
yeah. I think it's fine. We'll have to still get Parkinson, but that's okay.
Yeah,
like, I'm good with it.
It's easier to stomach. We'll only need 1 more running back with Brees, in my opinion.
Stafford was a nice pick, I think, but seeing Geno sitting here, it's like, could we have backdoored Noah? Geno, I just talked about Geno being a guy I wanted to boost up a little bit.
That's not something you can like pure backdoor though. You need to set that up around pick like 90. So that was that would have had to been on like the forefront a little bit earlier. Then it's hard to pure backdoor that. There's more pieces for the Rams. I mean, it's literally just that the wide receiver 3 in Seattle goes around pick 100 versus pick 170. That's just really the key difference there.
So what's our current build right now?
So we are currently sitting at 2-4-7-2.
So, okay, we're going to try to add Yoshi round 17, I imagine. Probably. So we have 3 more picks. I'd say 1 running back, 1 receiver, 1 tight end is what we're kind of looking at.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking.
Yeah. And I definitely want to add Parkinson to the last round, but like we'll see what falls to us because we do have 2 really good tight ends now. Like I know the stake of stacking, we should probably add him, but this is one of, again, those situations like if there's a great receiver or running back that falls in round 18, I'm not going to feel the need to completely force it. I would say in terms of let's check out those running backs because that's probably what we're looking at this round, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The next round. The other thing though, receiver, as much as I do like Yoshi, because we have this new Rams thing going on, is this maybe Greg Dortch territory?
It makes more sense.
It does make a little more sense with our build.
All right, we can grab Dortch probably in the next round. Do you want to get running back here, or do you want to?
I'm telling you, Dortch goes. And I'm looking at these backs like Tracy might fall. Let me see the running backs one more time. I know we got to make our pick. Why don't you queue up Dortch and get him at the top just to be safe? I like Tracy, but I think Tracy could come to us. Get Dortch to the top of the queue. Even though, again, there's more receivers I like here in terms of Yoshi, Tolbert. I don't know. Like Estime, we already have Javonte. Tracy's the only running back that really screams to me. Laube, we know will be there in round 18. Like Will Shipley. These are guys I'm interested in, but to me, like I'd rather get Dortch correlate our Stafford bet, because even if we don't get Parkinson here, we've now at least solidified that bet a little bit more around that game.
I'm fine with it. It's none of the running backs that like jump off the board to me, and I feel like there's a fair number of them that I will be fine with one of the ones that fall. Whoever ends up falling to us, it's just not going to make much of a difference to me.
Yeah, and Laube does have the with Olave, little week 17 again. So some tiebreakers. And again, I was writing up Zamir White today, and do you know the last time he saw over 175 carries?
Zamir White?
Yeah.
I would guess high school.
His sophomore year of high school.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. He sneakily had 2 ACL tears already in his career. I'm not sitting here saying Zamir White's this injury-prone guy. We don't know. We haven't really seen him, but he hasn't had a full workload since his sophomore year of high school. And all we get is Labe's gritty. Labe is everything we want him to be. He can handle more than we ever expected. He's great as a pass catcher, but he's also dominating as a runner. I'm telling you, Labe's going to make some starts this year, whether it's injury, whether it's Zamir White sucking. We know Alexander Madison blows, and that's in front of him. So I'm telling you, I'm very into Labe. I would say at our pick here, we probably lock him up, because I'm starting to see him go at the end of round 1, and we need a running back. And unless you want to go Tracy above him, which is also a running back too, I'm happy to spread out my exposure a little bit here. If you'd like to go Tracy, he's running as the clear number 2 there with the Giants. So
I did see that today. I'm
down for whichever one you like.
I have my fair share of Laube, so I'll go Tracy here. I mean, yeah, it's like the situation. It's the locked in RB2 Devin Singletary, not like the biggest needle mover. So I don't have much Tracy at all, and I have already locked up my Laube bags. So. I'm gonna.
I saw green. I was like, "Oh no, did Tracy go?" I love Tracy. I think I'm with you. My Laube bag is. I wouldn't call it locked up. It's certainly stuffed, and there's more room to keep packing in there. But I don't have enough Tracy, and I am feeling good about this explosive guy with Brian Daboll. Singletary I do like, but it is, like you said, nothing that. At least as a compliment, you're seeing those snaps where they're both on the field together. I like Tracy a lot. They seem to be doing a lot with him. And so, I think, Parkinson is probably the play to stack up Stafford a little bit more. Should he go, though? I mean, Yoshi's still probably on the board. And this is a team where if we have 9 receivers, like our receivers are a little underwhelming. So I don't mind.
9 receivers is fine. 9 is fine for this team.
In fact, dare I say, like if Yoshi's there, I honestly prefer him to Parkinson. I know staffing up Stafford's like the game theory makes sense, probably should, but I don't know. Yoshi does correlate with Chase Brown and Javonte, so there's it's not completely random. I just know this guy is going to go nuts. Like I'm a huge fan.
You have in the last 7 days become the biggest Andre Yoshivas stan in existence.
When I get these gut feelings, though, I'm not always great with everything in fantasy, but the last round guys, I just allow in him. I'm telling you, rewind tape at the end of the year. I really think we're going to look back and be like, Laube and Yoshi were those guys you really wanted. And I think Jalen McMillan is going to be one of those guys. And I know you have a big bag already, and I'm jealous. I don't have nearly as much of him. I could see Dortch being one of those guys. I'm a big fan of the Greg Dortcher chamber, as Liam Boyle too. Is certainly a huge fan as well.
He assumed the full-blown alter ego going as Torture Chamber on Twitter. But if you told me you were gonna latch on to one of my Bengals guys, I don't think it would have been Andre Yoshivas. That would not have been the guy.
I saw his headshots the other day too. I'm like, oh, this is the guy. Like I only seen him in pads. He looks big and intimidating, and then you're like, oh, this is him. He's not the scariest dude when you just see his face. He looks kind of like a little boy.
You see his pictures from Princeton in his track uniform, and you're like, "Oh, that guy really actually looks like a track guy."
He looks like a track guy, exactly. Yeah. And he's the guy I'm going to try to have 50% exposure to by the end of the season.
You're going to have 50% exposure. And there he goes.
Oh man, as we hyped him up, he goes right before us, which is fine. It forces us to do this the quote unquote smart play with Colby Parkinson, stack up Stafford. What I like about this too is like we have Josh Allen. We did a little Josh Allen, Breece Hall like week 17 thing, but at the end of the day, like that doesn't feel like the game. Like maybe it is. They did have a game where the Bills put up like over 30 on the Jets earlier this year, or earlier last year rather. But like I feel much better about Cardinals versus the freaking Rams. Yeah. I feel a lot better about that. Now we don't have the sexiest pieces of that game by any means.
We got pieces.
But we have some pieces. Like we have some pieces. Exactly.
We're invested.
That's all it comes down to.
We got the penny stocks of that game.
We have the penny stocks for sure. But I like those pieces. I do like Parkinson. I'm intrigued by this guy. Anytime McVay goes out of his way to get somebody, you got to think about what could this role be. And I know it's a rotation in camp, but Sean Payton doesn't rotate guys. Like if you're in for that drive, you're in for that drive. So, I like Parkinson. It's more so with, I guess, this build. It's like when you have Ingram, kind of the point of taking Ingram in round 7, he's not overly exciting, but it's like, okay, I only need 2 tight ends on this team. That it opens up the idea to go at another position. Maybe we could have gone at Lawbay.
I mean, I feel like it's all because of like the draft capital you have to invest. When you get 20 picks on Hunter Henry and a negligible, like literal 0 amount of draft capital in round 18, Colby Parkinson, like I feel like it's fine.
Yeah, but it's also the opportunity cost. If Laube is the guy that we need, maybe we could have considered him. But I do think, how do you go Stafford and single stack him with Robinson? That's a tough sell. So I think we got ourselves in a nice spot here. And I guess Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears both listed as the RB1. I've been well off Tony Pollard. I've been pretty into Spears. We're starting to see that price in a vacuum. Like if you could only take one of them, the price doesn't matter. Do you go Pollard over Spears, or like what are your thoughts on that?
No, I've been Spears all off season, and the 1A 1B literally on the depth chart does not come as a shock whatsoever.
No, they said it all year, right? Like,
it's been all off season. Like we see 2 starters, and you can just thinking about it, like the guys archetypally and just like what they offer as running backs, like it makes sense. Like it's like the least shocking piece of news. And either way, I don't put almost any weight into these off-season like initial depth charts. I mean, Trent Irwin's the Bengals wide receiver 3. Ian Hartitz tweeted it this today. At this point last off-season, Bijan Robinson was technically the reserve running back for the Atlanta Falcons. So I don't put any weight whatsoever into these at this stage.
What intern released this earlier today?
Exactly.
And didn't know what he's talking about. Like Zach Moss was the running back 1 for the Bengals, but Chase Brown's taken every single running back 1 snap in preseason so far. So, absolutely not. We're at 298, folks. We're going to do our team review now. But, hey, before we go and review that team, could you help push us over the edge to 300? 2 more people in here. Any likes, shares, retweets, all that good stuff. Get us over that edge. Be the first show in a long time. We've been over 300. It would be so helpful. But it also means you guys are back. It is that fantasy season. People are starting to crave it. And we're going to start hammering shows more regularly. Like I promised, once that guide is over, it just is such a big weight lifted. And I love writing it, but then I'm just so dead. But I love talking fantasy. And so clearly. So if, the more and more shows we can do, the better. And so I'm definitely excited between me and Mo, maybe the Truth getting back going. He's been talking about making his triumphant return. He's just kind of waiting for me to get ready for it. So we'll definitely get some more good shows, but get us over 300 today. And if you have some questions after we do our team review, we're happy to answer those as well. But let's dive on in, Mo, with the squad. Breece Hall, Olave, Diggs to start. So I love Breece Hall, as I said, my running back 2. No complaints there. Olave and Diggs are guys that they're not like heavy targets of mine. And yet it's one of those situations where I want to learn from my mistake of last year, like CeeDee Lamb and saying he's not really my favorite guy here, so I'm going to hammer Garrett Wilson every time, or I'm going to hammer, in this case, it would be Devontae Adams yet again. And I just recognize the idea of a Kubiak scheme, like getting Chris Olave those more short to intermediate range targets. So if in a vacuum, if I'm doing one draft, am I going to get Olave? No, he's not my guy this year. But can I see the world where Chris Olave, a talent I do really like, goes pretty crazy? Yeah, I absolutely can. There was a comment out of camp today that like Chris Olave is just going to be deadly in this scheme this year. So it's one of those things. Again, Diggs, do I prefer Tank Dell? I actually do. Like, honestly, if Price was not factored in, I think Tank Dell outscores Stephon Diggs this year. I really do. That being said, do I take Tank Dell every single time now? Because what if Diggs does regain the magic? He's reignited with CJ Stroud. So that's what I kind of like about this squad. It's not just to be contrarian. It's like, these are guys I totally don't even have to sell myself hard on that they're going to be good. It's just a matter of like, no, it's not redraft where I'm doing 2 to 3 teams and I'm just going to go get my guys. You're building the portfolio. And I think these guys, I'm happy to get more of them. It's not, I'm not upset at all, even though they're not technically my dudes. So what do you think about the Breece Hall, Olave, Diggs, JA start?
I think it's solid. Like we talked about the hero running back stuff, you got to hammer wide receiver basically locked in the next 2 rounds, and that's what we do. So, not like the trendiest, like most exciting picks, but like you can make the case for yourself for both guys. Like Olave, improved role, but was already seeing massive volume, like enormous role in the offense, and now hopefully some more creative usage that gives him some of the easier points. Like those layup targets that we continually talk about. So you add that on like to stabilize his floor on top of those deep targets that unlock his ceiling, and just hope that he connects with more of them this season, because they have definitely been there throughout his 2 seasons in the NFL. And then Stephon Diggs, like I understand wanting to be in on Tank Dell and Nico Collins. And like I said, I very much have a lot of Tank Dell, but there's very much a range of outcomes where Stephon Diggs leads this team in receiving yards, and he has a strong season once again. I mean, the target competition was obviously a massive step down, but among the elite target earners last season in Buffalo, regardless of the lack of conversion. I was reading about it the other day. Stephon Diggs, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but just a massive step down in terms of his catchable target rate on deep targets. It was like by far a career low. So you can make the argument for a lot of these guys bouncing back, and I'm fine to take them. Like you said, you just kind of, when you're drafting into the triple digits, like both of us are, like you're going to have a fair number of more teams than I am, but I'm still getting my fair share of drafts in. Like I want to have all these guys. I can't be taking too aggressive of stands. And then Josh Allen, I mean, we harped on it earlier. Like in the 4th round, just draft this guy. Like get him on your team. Yeah.
No brainer. I mean, it correlates with Breece Hall. If it didn't, I still wouldn't care. I'd still go for it. Such an easy stack to build out. I wish we ended up with more Bills, but it's like where, we would have had to reach for Khalil Shakir, over Chase Brown. And I'm not going to do that. The excitement of Chase Brown right now is too much. The thing I do love too is like, okay, so we took 2 receivers neither of us truly love, but we want to get into our portfolios. We understand it. Then we go Rashee Rice. Like, does he get suspended? Okay, that sucks. But it's our 3rd receiver. So it's easier to stomach in that sense. But then it's like, if he doesn't get suspended, I would have taken him where we took Olave. I would be in love with Rashee Rice in round 2. So we gave ourselves that out to like, suddenly Diggs is our 3 in a nutshell. If Rice doesn't, and if he gets suspended 4 games, we just know we have to survive 4 games, and then Rice is back to our number 1 guy. So I really like the more I built out with him. It's only if he gets suspended, like 6 is still stomachable. Probably not a round 5 guy with 6, but even round 6, I'd be happy with him to 6 games. 8 games where you start to get like a half a season with my round 5 pick. It starts to get tough, but you still can tell yourself the narrative. That's where, like, if we had gotten Yoshi and gone 9 receivers, you really build in some nice cushion with Rashee Rice. But Yoshi ended up going, so it wasn't like an option for us anyways. But, man, I'm starting to really, like, again, who do we want to bump our exposures to? Honorable mention would 100% be Rashee Rice. That's a guy, as long as he's going around 5 and 6, like it's until we know, we don't know, and it could be nothing. And we could be looking back saying, why didn't we have him on every single team type of situation? So, yeah, I love the Rice pick.
If it's like a month, we can stomach Jaden Reed and Curtis Samuel as the wide receiver 3 for a month. But just kind of getting into those next picks, like I said, I have my concerns about Jaden Reed. I gave my full spiel during the draft. But when he's falling 8 picks past ADP, like I know what kind of player this guy can be with the ball in his hands. So you got to get some of them. I probably won't have much of him in redraft. But here, like I said, when I'm drafting a ton of teams, I'm going to get my fair share of them. And then Evan Ingram, just like that steady PPR. I know this is half PPR, but still like that steady target monster. There's some talk of him getting more involved in the vertical passing game. So you got to like that for his ability to tack on a little bit of a ceiling while he's already got a pretty steady floor. Calvin Ridley departing should potentially raise that floor even higher. And then Curtis Samuel, you go along with the Josh Allen pick. I outlined why I like him. So those next couple of picks are all pretty straightforward to me. I like grabbing Evan Ingram there to provide some consistent production, especially. That's one of my favorite picks in this range. Not like in general, but just for this draft, I really like that pick at 79.
And you even said earlier when we were talking about like the top 3 single week tight end scores, like Ingram was in the top 3. That surprised me. I actually did not know that stat. There's very few stats I feel like I don't know right now. And that one caught me by surprise. Like there is definitely a ceiling with Evan Ingram. My one thought with the Jade Reed pick is because we had Rashee Rice, did it make more sense there to potentially go Deontay Johnson, a guy that like, right out of the box, you're getting 10 targets in week 1 and week 2 and week 3. It might not be great because it's the Panthers offense, but whereas Reed's role is like a little bit more of a wild card right now. If Rice is to get suspended, I think Deontay Johnson, at least you're stepping into a guy that like it might not be a huge ceiling. He's probably getting you 10 to 12 for the more weeks than not this season. So part of me wonders like Deontay Johnson over Reed. Reed does tempt me a little bit more, honestly, though. I feel a little more excited about him, but part of the Rashee Rice play is like, do you have to go a little bit safer after you take a Rashee Rice just to buoy in a little bit more floor in case he does get suspended? So I think Deontay Johnson would have been the guy to do that over Reed, but I don't know. Do you think there's any credence to what I'm doing, or is that a little bit more overthinking it and it's just like take the guy you really wanted?
I think you're looking into it a little bit much. Yeah. Too much. Like it makes sense. Like the argument makes sense, but I think it might just be too minute or like too specific. Of like you're just getting down too much into the nitty gritty. But just for me personally, like with not taking Jaden Reed at a high rate, I have to grab him when I see him at pick 66.
Yeah.
Just so I can get my pieces of him. So that was very quick for me in that sense.
Absolutely. Like he's a guy that in week 17, if this team makes it all the way through, Jaden Reed could be the guy that buries you if you don't have him. There's absolutely. Exactly. Whereas Deontay, it could eat maybe, but I don't see many worlds where it's like, damn, when you open up your week 17 lineup, who would you rather see, Reed or Deontay? And it's definitely Reed. Like, there's no doubt about it. And Curtis Samuel kind of does, like, if our Josh Allen bet's going to win, like Curtis Samuel's kind of doing what Deontay Johnson, that argument we made just, a few rounds later in a better offense. We're looking at 100-ish touches for this guy. So we want floor, we got him. Then we go ceiling, exactly. We go Chase Brown, like the darling of fantasy right now, goes after Zach Moss. That makes no sense to me at this point when it's Chase Brown's the clear number 1. And clearly if he's the number 1, he has a higher ceiling. Like that one makes no sense. One guy, when do we pass on James Conner? I don't mean to keep going backwards, but I know we had considered him at one point. It was Evan Ingram. And I think Ingram makes sense there over James Conner. So
100%.
James Conner made it back to us, but we had to go Samuel no matter what. Conner was a nice steal this draft, though.
If it wasn't a Breece Hall team where we're spending round 1 draft capital, I would have probably been fine. But like you're hoping Breece Hall hits your lineup 14 weeks. Like
exactly.
It's you don't really need to be too worried about solidifying. I mean, like I understand like the per game like top 10 stuff with James Conner, but I feel like an RB2 season is more realistic this year. But yeah, moving on to these like middle round picks. Chase Brown, yeah, we've hit on it in the last 2 weeks. Like, I'm very much like I'm adjusting my priors. Like I was leaning, like I was very, very skeptical of Chase Brown more than most people throughout the offseason. I've said that Moss was my preferred option out of the backfield, but if they're going to give Brown the opportunity, I'm still nervous about him succeeding, but like it's you gotta take that kind of talent with the combined with the opportunity. So I'm fine taking that pick, especially after Zach Moss. And then, yeah, I've preached my love of Javonte Williams. We talked about the value of the Denver backfields, providing plentiful points. And this is the second year removed from that multi-ligament tear. So you got to hope that he is returning to form and healthy. When he's healthy, I believe that he is the most talented back in this backfield. So he is the favorite to be the 1A here. And I believe he's going to win that job and maintain that job all year long. So I've been grabbing my fair share of him. And then the next like two primary picks we make here, Marshawn Lloyd, a bet to go along with Jaden Reed. I really like him. There was like that report of him having like a redshirt year, but at the end of the day, that's like pure speculation. You see him ripping 50-yarders during training camp practices. It's tough that he did miss a week and a half of training camp practices. That is pretty brutal for a rookie who's trying to learn the offense. But we talked about it in the RSJ group chat. I am not I refuse to believe that an NFL team redshirts a guy like Marshawn Lloyd in favor of AJ Dillon. That just is not something that logically checks out to me. And I'm like, then again, NFL teams do illogical things all the time. But I'm still more than willing to bet on Marshawn Lloyd. And then Jalen Polk, already running with the ones at training camp. The guy at The Athletic, I'm forgetting his name right now, believes he could be the number one for the Patriots as soon as the opening snap of the season. So that's probably, if that's the case, he is definitely the cheapest number one option in drafts. And he sets up for backdoor stuff as well.
Yeah, Pat Crane's second most owned player. Not that I have to follow his word for gospel, but the guy won $1 million. And the way he talks about the game, I love. Very smart guy. And I'm a Pats fan, and so I really hope that Polk does pan out. And I have him. He's probably my second or third highest receiver, not overall player, quite like Crane. But, I'm definitely in on Polk. It correlates with Week 16 with the Josh Allen build. So I'm all about it. And I know I mentioned Connor, but I agree with Charlie here where it's like Chase, Javonte, like hard to ask for a more gorgeous 9-10 running back duo. Not only do they correlate, but it is just so much upside with both those guys. To have Breece Hall and then those two, one of those two is going to hit big and be our running back too. Maybe they both hit, and it's just like our team is just a super team. I think that's I think that's where our draft really shines, is that 9-10. And then I love the Jalen Polk, the rookies there. We know the back-weighted production is so crucial in best ball, and we got two guys that really could shine. Polk maybe right out of the box, and Marshawn Lloyd maybe right out of the box too. Like that 50-yard touchdown run. Like AJ Dillon's not doing that. I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy the AJ Dillon best shape of his career garbage. Like that's not happening. It's not true. We got then a little funky. We went unstack Stafford to then go Robinson and Parkinson. So he's not unstacked. You get some Dortch. Again, I think you summarized it best. We have pieces of a really fun game. The best pieces? No, probably not. But we got pieces. We have pieces of maybe the game that you need. And you just never know. Maybe it is the weird pieces that suddenly go off that day. We know there's going to be points. It opens up with a Robinson 18-yard touchdown. Dortch drives down. You can make up your stories all you want. But we've got – if you're going to go late stacks, why not go for late pieces of the best game on the slate? So I think that's solid. Hunter Henry, 20 picks below ADP, a guy that I already love. No brainer. We saw, and that was one of those ones. You look at the queue; it was all blue. It's like, ugh,
exactly.
It's ugly. Like, would Conklin have correlated a little better for Week 12? Maybe, but like it's Conklin versus Henry. I feel so much better about Henry than I do Conklin. I actually like Conklin, but like I definitely think Henry. We already had Polk. It gives us an out with. I guess we had Stafford, so we knew we weren't going to go Drake May at that point. But even still, it's like whether it's Brissett, who's looking couldn't camp right now, and if it's May and he takes off, like we're giving ourselves an upside narrative for the Pats, who are projected to be the worst offense in the league. But hey, you never know.
Got to tell yourself the story.
Got to tell us the story. And then we wrapped up with Dortcher Chamber. favorite of mine. Tyron Tracy, great speedy back, number 2 for the Giants. Something happens to Singletary, could be a league winner. 20 picks past, pretty past ADP. I don't know exactly where he normally goes, but that's definitely at least like 8 to 10. And then Parkinson, stack it up. Yoshi, I do think if Yoshi had fallen to us, I might have tried to influence us. Again, it's nice to stack up Stafford with at least 2 pieces, so I'm not mad at all. But with the Rashee Rice uncertainty, like when I do draft Rice, I need at least 8 receivers, and I often find myself leaning in towards the 9 builds just to protect myself, and maybe I'm playing it a little too safe there. But I also love Yoshi, so it was a little tough watching him go. But I mean, I think it's a good squad. Like, I think there's a lot to like about this. I don't know. What are your final thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I really like how the running back room turned out. And like you said, with the top heaviness of the wide receiver room is not exactly where you like it to be. But then whenever Rashee Rice comes back, you've got some significant depth and you've got a piece of a high-end offense. So I really like how this team turned out. And I don't mind the third receiver or the third tight end, given how cheap we got Hunter Henry. So I'm a big fan of this team. It's going to take some, and like, even I was going to say it's going to take like a breakout, but like, even if Jaden Reed doesn't like break out, like we've seen that he can provide like the massive like game slate winning spike weeks. So I think we've got a team that's set up to compete.
Yeah. If Reed does what he did last year, where we got him, that's all our team needs. And if he does take a step forward, then, even better. Some does come down to Rice's suspension, but if it's nothing, then this team's unbelievable. If it's 4 games, this team's extremely good. And if it's half the year, I think we have enough of the like Demarcus Robinson, Dortches, even if like the Polk bet is like you're getting a guy from day one that can play. They're not Rice by any means, but they're all guys that are going to be able to help weather whatever storm it is that we need to get through until Rice is available. And then once Rice is here and he's our number 1 and Olave's our 2 and Diggs is our 3, the whole complexion of this team flips. And it's unbelievable. So it's a huge ceiling team when Rice is here. It's a matter of when does he get here, and I think we can survive and be competitive. That's part of Josh Allen too. It's like, even if your wide receiver 3 is giving you 8, Josh Allen's getting you 35. So it balances it out when you have that 4th round Josh Allen. It's just such a cheat code. I don't get the Josh Allen price at all. Like, every year, what's reflective of this too. This might be the last point I'm down to make, and we can get out of here. But like, they do a tournament every year. It's called the Graveyard. It's mid-season, and Josh Allen goes pick 6, 7. Like right in like the first round. Like he's a first rounder every single time in the mid-season draft, and it's like, okay.
Josh Allen is on pace to have another top 10 season of all time. Sure, I'll grab him in the first round.
Deal. Deal. Like, exactly what you're getting. So you used to be able to take him in round 2, maybe 3 at the latest, and now we're getting him in round 4. I don't care what I've done until then. That's why getting at least 2 receivers in your first 3 is like, you don't want to get too behind the avalanche, so you can take that 4th round detour. But even if I did somehow, like if we had started Breece Hall, Olave, Kyron fell to us in 3, and then Josh Allen's there, I'm just getting more confident in the Yoshis, the Tolberts. I know it's not great firepower, but that's where like a Rashee Rice makes a ton of sense, because it's like
Yoshi and Tolbert can sustain the detour in round 3.
You can get 9 receivers and somehow sustain it. I know that would have been a lot tougher. That's why, again, it does make sense. If you start hero running back, you probably want 2 receivers. Like, I don't know, would you have gone? Kyron's the guy you wanted to bump. Had he made it to us, would you have considered him there? Or is that just too many running backs for you?
I would have considered it for sure.
Yeah.
I really would have liked, especially if we had gotten Puka there at 18. That would have been crazy.
I was hoping Puka would fall so bad. That would have been nice. Yeah. I'm very intrigued to see what type of teams you can build with Puka. All right, well, hey, we did it. We crossed well into 326 with us. Thank you so much, guys. Awesome to get so many of you with us live. Looks like our questions are run out here, so we're going to sign out. But one last plea for that thumbs up button, that like, the share, the retweet before you head out. And if you're not live with us, but you're catching the replay, thank you so much. You can find all our content at rotostreetjournal.com. Within the next day or two, the draft guide will be live. So please do come onto the website, check that on out. I've been kind of holed away for the last week and a half. It's been beautiful days here in the summer, but I go to the Beverly Public Library and I sit there for 9 hours a day just writing page after page of fantasy analysis for you guys. And I think it's as good as it's ever been. I just feel so good about like the difference between redraft and best ball. And I'm really just lasered in on how to attack both. And I think it's going to be phenomenal work. Last year's guide, we gave you Tank Dell and Kyron and Raheem Mostert, like the guys you needed last year were all in there. We've been on our game the last few years, and I'm so excited. I can't wait for you guys to check it out. So if you're willing to support your boys, it's the only thing we sell every single season. So that'll be out the next 2 days. Keep your eyes peeled. We'll certainly go live and be promoting it and do some more streams for redraft, as Joe was asking. But yeah, all the other stuff too at rotostreetjournal.com is still churning out. Definitely day-to-day Cooper Cup stuff now. Chase Brown, we're hitting a lot more of those quick hit stock watches that you guys know and love the boys for, in addition to your features. Anything recent that you want to pump out, Mo, before we head out?
Yeah, I'm going to explain why Wolf wishes he had done his draft guide before the RSJ staff draft, and explain how my team will be taking down the title this season. Sneak preview: my team does feature Josh Allen as well as Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. So I've got a little bit of a star-studded lineup there, but that'll be out. The plans tomorrow. So yeah, I'm excited for everyone to explain their kind of draft strategy. Yeah. Like, I'll look into the minds of the RSJ staff and see how people like to draft and how they value certain players. So that's always an exciting series that I'm glad we started last season. And so, yeah, that'll be steadily pouring out. And I had the 2 slots, so mine will be coming out on the earlier side.
You had a sick draft. I remember it was between you and Liam, who I was trying to. I think I gave it to Liam just to give you shit, but your team was sick. If you hadn't passed on CeeDee Lamb at 2, I don't even know what you were thinking. We'll have time to unpack those and debate it. I think you and Truth should review all the drafts. I was looking at the other day, and I took freaking Zeke over Chase Brown, and I'm just like, what? And then we drafted before the news. Like, yeah, we drafted before the news had broken that Chase was wrong with the ones. But I remember looking at it and be like, yeah, I should go Chase Brown here. But then I was like, his ADP is 130. He's going to make it back to me. I can sneak. I had Chase Brown ahead of Zeke, but I was trying to. It's too cute with ADP. I think I'm going to make sure to write that up. Especially when I was the 12th pick. If you're locked into the turns there, you cannot be cute and try to play the ADP game. If Chase Brown was your guy and he's got an ADP of 130, but you want him at 108, you got to go get him. And nowadays, especially, that's one of my big regrets. So you guys will see that all in the series as we break it down. We'll have the overview of the entire draft come out tomorrow, and then pick by pick, we'll be slowly rolling out throughout the week. So definitely a great series that you should check out. Regardless of where you're drafting, I would check it all out so you can see the minds of everybody else. And as Charlie said, thank you, Charlie, for pumping up. Everyone, do yourself a favor. Get your hands on that guide ASAP. So it will be out for you guys. I'd say, maybe tomorrow night, I have one more section to break down, probably proofread, get it finalized. And I'd say Wednesday, right ahead of the preseason was my goal this year. And I think we're going to hit it. So thank you, Charlie. I know you support it every year, and I appreciate that. So, all righty, guys. Again, 330 of you with us. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I'll be tweeting out when we're going to go live next. We'll certainly be live next Monday at 7 p.m. But like I've been saying, want to get at least 2 to 3 streams a week with this last kind of big push of draft season now hitting. We want to get some more redraft stuff in addition to this usual best ball stream. So be on the lookout. We're going to get a regular cadence on the redraft side of things as well. In a world full of fantasy sheep, guys, please be that wolf. Till next time, later.